You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. I am your host, Gary Melton. We got a great show for you. I appreciate everybody showing up. All of our truth seekers are patriots. We love you guys. If you want the truth and not narrative, this is the place to be. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like, you subscribe, all those things. Also, down in the description below, there is a link. If you'd like to support our channel and the work that we do, it's a couple of bucks a month. It goes a long way, and we appreciate your support. Also, make sure you follow us on all our social media, other social media platforms down in the description below, especially on X. We've been doing a lot on X. We did a space last night on X. We ended up having over 12,000 listeners, and I don't know, something like that. That post was seen, shared, over 70,000 at the last time I checked. I'm going to start doing more of those. I think that's a really good opportunity to reach out and to talk to people and get information out. It always seems counterintuitive to me. I always like, X spaces are dumb. Like, you know, it's not the video platform that everybody likes today, but apparently a lot of people on X like it. And I think it's a good tool to get the information out there and get the truth out there. We had a lot of people on last night. We ended up talking to Diligent Denizen, Project Constitution, among many others. And of course, even Blake Neff showed up. So they were asking him a lot of questions. And I think we clarified a lot of things for a lot of people, hopefully. So expect to see more of those. So make sure you're following us on X, and also on X, you can become a subscriber. Again, it's a few dollars a month. It goes a long way. And I am going to try to start doing more. And I keep saying this, I know, but I am going to start trying to do more subscriber only stuff, both here on YouTube and X. A lot of times I forget, but we will try to do more to give you, I don't know, exclusive access so we can talk about things that we wouldn't necessarily talk about in a live stream. Folks, the video that we're getting ready to show you, I think is really, really important. Somebody sent me a clip of this morning. I was like, we have got to cover this without a doubt. But before we do that, I do want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. We got the obscure moderator, Ben. Thank you so much for everything that you do for this channel, as well as our other moderators, Lace, many, many more. We appreciate you. I don't even expect you guys to show up when we do these kind of ad hoc impromptu shows, but yet there you are, always in the chat. So we appreciate you keeping, the chat civil, and I don't know, just making sure that we're all adults here and we can talk without a bunch of name calling and trolls and all the other stuff. It makes it more enjoyable for everybody else, so they contribute to the show. Of course, Jen, the producer, always contributing to the show in so many different ways that you guys don't even know behind the scenes. But we also got iRule. We got, I don't know, the future, Mary Joey, Yasmin. Yasmin changed her handle, or maybe she has a different account. Velvet Lace, Nikki Freedom, Cindy Shepard, Ash Rose, Lil Rebel Yell, and many, Tammy McDonald. As a matter of fact, it was Tammy that sent me this clip that inspired this entire show. So thank you, Tammy. She was over there on X. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to end up pulling this up in just a minute, but Jen, jump in here for a minute. You were just telling me some information, some breaking news as we started this show. So if you want to jump in here and show us that or talk about that, please do so.
So 0 Hour posted this, and apparently this is the notice of withdrawal for Blake, and I can't even say his last name, Esquire, who is the attorney for Candace Owens in the Macron case. So apparently not even her attorney can deal with her.
Is anybody shocked by that?
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
No one is shocked by that. So anyways, yeah. And I almost wonder if some of this stuff is strategic, in that that's obviously gonna delay the next hearing, or most likely will. I don't know. Somebody in the chat that's smarter when it comes to court proceedings, let me know about that. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. She loses attorneys left and right. I think
she loses employers left and right.
This is, you're not wrong. Oh, and by the way, folks, if we get through this video that I'm getting ready to show you and we go through and kind of react to, we'll try to squeeze in some of the Candace episode before 8 p.m. By the way, make sure you guys stick around at 8 p.m. We're going to have Matt Tardio, and we will also be having Rakita Law, Nick Rakita from Rakita Law. I can never remember that name. I had to check my notes here, but we're going to be talking about what's actually going on, the bigger psyop that this all plays into, and we'll be talking about that at length and showing you some information. We'll also be talking about and showing you information regarding the people that are at play, from Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, Ian Carroll, and many, many others. Like, you need to be aware of what's happening, and you need to continue to fight and push the counter narrative, which is the truth in all of this. All right, so I want to throw this up here, and man, this was such a good episode. Now, I don't always agree with Julian Dorey. Like, he has like 1 foot over in the Ian Carroll camp almost at all times. That being said, the difference between him and Ian is, I do think that he's an honest broker of information, and he's acting in good faith. And the fact that he would have this guy on proves that. And by the way, this is somebody similar that Candace would have access to as well. And by the way, Baron Coleman, all these people could be accessing people that are professionals, that have a lot of experience, a lot of technical knowledge in every aspect of this case. They never do that. They create the narrative out of pure ignorance. They say, this is what happened. I'm going through this with Ian Carroll right now. Ian Carroll right now is talking about, oh, well, now that we found a live round that was talked about in the hearing and on the computer science building, now that's where a different shooter was, up on the roof. I've explored that. Yeah, there's technically a line of sight up on the roof, and maybe we'll get to that in a little bit later. From that roof, the computer science building. But it's on a slope, and you are, as a shooter, you would be silhouetted, and I will show you the line of sight. Yeah, there's a line of sight from that rooftop to Charlie Kirk, but there's also a line of sight from a lot of other rooftops where people were. You would easily see this person silhouetted both from the front and from the side. And by the way, you can even see that rooftop from the road. So they're just scrambling. They're desperate to find where they can move the goalpost so they can milk that out for another 3 months. And then they'll move it again, and they'll milk that out for another 3 months. Like, these people are like, I don't know, perpetuating idiot machines. It's amazing to watch. It really is. All right. So anyways, this is super important. This guy right here, you know what? Let me see if he does an actual intro, because I think that's worth doing. I've looked him up. I've looked at his bio. He's a very interesting person, to say the least. Would love to get him on the show. Joseph Scott Morgan.
Amen. And so I take a lot of pride in that, the histrionics of it, because I've gotten to the point now, after over 40 years of working in the field and then being a professor, I've got the long view now.
Yeah.
What you leave behind.
Yeah, I mention it every single time you're in here, but even from our very first recording back in episode 146, the gravity and weight with which, to this day, you still treat every death notification you ever had to do with people, where you have to go tell a loved one the unthinkable.
All right, we're going to skip forward here. Look, I definitely recommend that you go watch this entire podcast. We're going to kind of stick to the ballistics and some other elements of this that I think are really important.
30 caliber, maybe up to 30-06. Yeah. When they're cycling that weapon. All right. Okay. This is not a miracle. This is physics.
It's physics.
All right. So
bone was so healthy, and the density.
He's reading Andrew Colvett's original post after he had talked to the surgeon, and I'll let him take it from there.
He was so impressive that he's like the Man of Steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him too, unquote. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Remarkable, miraculous. Joseph, even if this were true, we live in a country where Arlen Specter once told us there was something called a magic bullet that went through fucking 8 different whatever definitions of physics that it just totally broke to kill John F. Kennedy, to make sure. Nothing to see here. I don't believe this, to be clear. I think that's insane. Charlie Kirk was a big guy. He certainly wasn't like Mr. fucking America, though, as far as bodybuilding goes. But like, even if on the off chance this were true, why would you?
All right, this is kind of funny. Throughout this, you see Julian Dorey kind of trying to take this gentleman down the conspiracy rabbit hole, and time after time, he's resistant to it. He kind of hedges a little bit, kind of breaks the ice a little bit, and then he kind of pulls him back into reality. And I really like how he manages Dorey's proclivities, to say the least.
You ever tweet that out at a time where people were already going, what the fuck with this case? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And he would have been advised to keep his freaking mouth shut at that point in time. And also, one other thing, I don't care what a surgeon has to say.
You don't?
No, I don't. They have the utility for me as a death investigator. What did you see when you got in? Other than that, I don't want to hear your freaking opinions about anything.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah. I want to know if you go in and you take life-saving steps in order to stem bleeding, those sorts of things, maybe your initial assessment of trauma is fine. I don't want to hear about moose, and I don't want to hear about elk, and I don't want to hear about how many moose or mooses or whatever you want to call it around that you think may have passed through. Okay? That's total garbage. All right. Okay. This is not.
All right. He literally goes through and dismantles everything that we've heard throughout this conspiracy as to why 30-06 couldn't have not had an exit wound. All right. Why it would potentially stay in the body. And that is, we've heard about moose. We've heard about elk. It's nonsense. And my God, for those of you out there taking chunks of meat and sticking it in your backyard and trying to shoot through it and be like, oh, yeah, whatever happened to this is definitely what would have happened to Charlie Kirk. You're a moron. You're a moron. And this is a guy with extensive experience. He talks more about that later on, that highlights the idiocy behind so many people's opinions about this.
A miracle. This is physics.
It's physics.
It's physics, and it's also goes to the structure of the 30-06 round.
All right, let's go there.
Yeah,
That's what I was hoping you'd do.
Yeah. So first off, so we understand what a 30-06 round is. 30 is a designator of the caliber. That's measured at the bottom of the round, okay, which we'll get into in just a second. That's the base of the projectile. The projectile itself is seated into a cartridge, all right? Okay. Cartridge holds the 30-06 projectile. Once that primer is tapped off with this rifle, it sends that round downrange. Okay. It has certain ballistic characteristics. Well, do you know what the origin of 30-06 round is?
No.
Okay. Well, the beauty of the 30-06 round, we know a lot about it, and here's why. 30 is a caliber. Do you know what 06 is? Most people don't. It's the year that it was developed. 1906. Guess where we used this round to great effect?
World War I?
Yeah. It's what the doughboys carried.
No shit.
Yeah. So when they're cycling that weapon, and it's a bolt action rifle, it's not semi-automatic. You have to physically cycle it like this. Okay. It ejects a round, and then you're ready to rock and roll. Do you know what became the most popular hunting cartridge in the wake of World War I?
30-06?
30-06. Yeah. Everybody's grandpappy had one. They would take it and they would go deer hunting with it, which is the most prevalent. You can call deer large game, but they're not actually large game,
right.
Kind of a mid-range. So people have used it to great effect for a long, long time.
How about Al Capone?
Al Capone, those were Tommy guns. I think that
just Tommy guns.
Yeah, Tommy guns and 45 calibers.
I feel like you would have liked that 06.
He probably would have. It's been chambered for a variety of different weapons. I think that the Browning, the BAR, was initially chambered in 30-06, which you've seen in all kinds of war movies over the years. I know it's 308, but it doesn't matter. For our purposes, though, 30-06 is a very effective round. And there's also Remington makes this cartridge, and several manufacturers do. You've got Remington, you've got Winchester, all these other, but Remington, and if I remember correctly, I think these are Remington rounds. Did you know that there is actually a round, and I think it's like 155 grain round that is utilized in this weapon. And there is a particular brand of this weapon that's called the most deadly mushroom in the woods.
Most deadly mushroom.
He's talking about Corlock specifically. And Colton, I owe you an apology, man. I missed one of your super chats yesterday. I apologize. But Colton says, my early donation to the obscure YouTuber and Paramount Not So Tactical YouTuber, Candace Owens. Gary the dog post on the pistol range was cute. Reminds me of my dog Jax. Yeah, so we're talking about Magnus, our Cane Corso. He's I don't know, he's probably well over 140 pounds now. He's a beast. He's my second Cane Corso, and I love that dog, and I love that breed, to be honest with you. Yasmin became a member. All right, 2 things real quick. Again, we'd love it if you became a member. Number 2, share this. That's free. You want to support our channel? You want to support us getting out the truth? You want to combat the lies? Share our content. That's how you do that. And it's free. All it takes is to either copy and paste the link, or if you're watching this on X right now, you just hit the retweet button and make sure you hit the like button as well. Thank you, guys.
Room in the woods.
Mm-hmm. You know why? Because this particular round was designed so that when it impacted on target, the round actually mushroomed. But it doesn't mushroom like a hollow point does, where you've got these little wings that kind of deploy. It turns into a fist. So you go from 30 caliber, maybe up to 40, 45, maybe up to 50, because it expands out and it cavitates as it goes through.
Cavitates.
Yeah, it cavitates an area. It creates a channel. It actually creates a channel in whatever your target area is. And from what I'm seeing, and we'll find out what the medical examiner sees, and I can hold forth on that for a little bit.
Okay.
But from what I saw with the initial view, it entered, and it's to the left of the midline. Okay. And when I say the midline, if you find your Adam's apple right here, okay, your larynx sits right here. It's entering right about here, which is right over where, your external jugular is, your carotids run through here.
Right.
And for that horrific moment, you see, and I'll get to this too, you see Charlie do this, you see his shirt balloon, and then you see him begin to list to the left like this, falling down. If I remember correctly, he contracts his thumb like this, and that's many times when you see this is, if you watch an NFL game,
it's a fencing mechanism.
Well,
right?
you go like this. If you see somebody with a head injury or a neurological thing, exactly. You'll see that event. And when I saw that initially, I'm thinking this has hit his spine. It's hit his probably spinal cord. All right. And then he goes down. And they're talking about, this goes back to the ballistics. They're talking about that they recovered the round from his body, but it's deformed to the point that they could not read ballistics on it. It cannot be excluded. All right. So they haven't excluded this round. The round first went to the FBI, which I found kind of weird.
Right. Isn't that whole thing, the whole chain of command was a little odd, right?
And then it winds up going to the ATF. Let me tell you something. No offense to the FBI. All right.
Here it comes.
But if I'm looking to do anything relative to ballistics, hands down, going to the ATF.
Really?
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Yeah.
They have some of the top ballistic experts. And look, the FBI does too, but this is where they dance. That would have been my first stop. All right.
Well, they were too busy in Valhalla.
I'm just saying that's where I would have sent it. Yeah. And I found that out, I think yesterday. I'm saying yesterday. Hope that's okay.
So
Colton points out a super important point that I'm with you. It's like, dude. And that is, he says, I'm tired of people claiming it was a professional shot. Looking at Tyler's targets versus mine is insane. I'm not even a sniper. I share the comparison on X. Yeah, like 138 yards, folks, is nothing. I can get you guys shooting a target this big at 138 yards. I'll teach you the fundamentals of marksmanship in 10 minutes, a very abbreviated class. I'll get you down there and we'll do some dry firing. And within 20 minutes, I will have you shooting a target this big at 138 yards, unless you just, I don't know, shake like Michael J. Fox or something weird. Like you got some strange thing going on. But the average person, and especially a young 22-year-old kid, I had my 8-year-old son out shooting, taking our long-range courses, shooting 1,000 yards when he was 8 years old. All right. He's older now. He's 12. But, and he's shot much further than that. So anyways, there's nothing professional about this shot. There's nothing difficult about this shot. I had a short where I literally am at 140 yards. I shoot a target this big, standing offhand. First shot. Nothing hard about it, folks. But the grifters want you to believe it is, because that adds another layer of complexity, conspiracy, suspicion. That's what they want you to believe.
We're recording this on Friday. The episode is going to come out Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. And the crime scene tech was giving her testimony relative to this, and she talked about the chain of custody relative to these rounds where they went to be examined and all that sort of stuff. But they didn't have enough to do the ballistics, and let me kind of break that down so that folks understand what that means.
Over the years running this business, the subscriptions and all the overhead has complicated them. Monarch,
which would have been
Monarch.com.
You have the base, which is circular, okay? And this is fractured off to the point, the shaft of the projectile, which would have been about that long. Okay. That fractured shaft, it's not just fractured, it's probably fragmented or mushroomed. Who knows? At this point, they were able to measure the caliber, and they're saying, okay, this fits within the parameters for a 30-06 round. But there's not enough there for them to look at the striations on the sides of the projectile itself. And
Can you explain the striations?
Sure, absolutely. So within the barrel of the 30-06 rifle, you have what are referred to as lands and grooves. Grooves, exactly what they are. They're twists. Okay, so grooves are kind of deep channels. Lands are flat. And so if you look at a barrel on cross section, it when you look at it, you've got a land like this, and you've got a groove, land, groove, land, groove,
Yes.
land, groove, and they're twisted. So when a round travels out of that barrel, it begins to spin. Okay, that's why this is a rifled round. All right, and for folks that don't understand what that means, if you've ever thrown a football with somebody, okay, right. So the more efficient you can make that spiral, the further it's going to go. If you've ever heard the term a wounded duck, where quarterbacks will drop back and they're getting hit right at the last moment, and it just kind of flutters off, doesn't have a tight spiral. Well, with a rifled round as opposed to smoothbore, which we had back in Revolutionary War, which is like a musket kind of bouncing down.
Goddamn right we did.
Hell yeah. The rifled round is revolutionary. Okay. And so this round is transferring all of this energy that happens at that moment of explosion. Okay. It's going downrange, it's spinning. It retains energy and it retains direction. Okay. So you're talking about it going downrange and striking the target which you intend for it to hit. So when it delivers that energy, okay, energy, it's going to be devastating. Now, back to Charlie, this is just my opinion, okay?
Pure spec here.
When you see Charlie's shirt, I'm talking about him like I know him, old buddy, old pal. When you're talking about Charlie Kirk's shirt, all right, and people have made much of this, okay?
Yes.
It kind of balloons out like this. It's called kinetic energy.
So when you see that, there's nothing to you that looks abnormal of any type of gunshot from this type of weapon that you've seen in your career.
Like an exploding microphone? No, it's
okay. You're out on the exploding microphone.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's where I'm at on the exploding microphone. And again, anyone with half a brain understanding the basic concepts of just physics. If you understand high school physics, if you understand Newtonian physics, like exploding microphone is so stupid. Oh, and by the way, maybe I'll play it later or not. Yesterday I played a video of Baron Coleman trying to explain why we didn't hear or see any visible evidence from the exploding microphone. And he said, well, this is why, those explosives go off in like 3/1000ths of a second. And there's no way for the camera to catch that. That's, it's filming at 60 frames per second. Okay. Guess what? I hadn't even thought about this. Guess what the ignition time of a projectile is inside of a gun? It is 2/1000ths of a second. But yet we still hear everything that takes place. There are clear observables. And so to sit there and pretend that a exploding microphone, because Patton has, is at 2,000ths or 3,000ths, whatever the ignition time that it takes place, it's extremely quick. It's in milliseconds, obviously. But to sit there and say, explain that, explain the lack of observables and the auditory signature that we're going to get from that because of such a quick ignition. We have the same thing with firearms, folks. Like, you're going to hear that because it resonates. And of course, there is, again, we have deflagration as that powder burns down the barrel. But even that, we're talking less than 2/1000ths of a second. But the fact is you would still see all the observable evidence of an explosion. You can't get away from that. Physics doesn't allow it. And I don't care. They can sit there and say shape charge this, shape charge that. A shape charge is still an omnidirectional blast. We would still see that blast and that energy burn through the shirt. Patton is burning around 4,000 degrees centigrade. It's literally hotter than the sun. Even if we burn that up in that amount of time, it's still going to melt, burn, scorch anything around it, including the microphone itself his shirt. Like it's the dumbest theory. And this person, you know, Dr. Joseph Scott's, I don't know if he's a doctor, but Joseph Scott Morgan's expression on this, how he reacts to this, tells you everything you need to know how ridiculous such a proposition actually is.
I think I lost points off of my IQ just by saying exploding microphone.
All
Anyway, so
well, let's pretend it's a high IQ point.
Yeah.
And how you would break it down with another high IQ point.
Right. So with the kinetic energy delivery, which is part of the destructive nature of a weapon, it's not just the projectile itself; it's the energy that it delivers. So let's just pretend that we're on the shore of a beautifully placid pond. All right. Maybe there's a few ducks swimming over there. You know, you can see the little fishies in the water. There's a frog over there. And we pick up a stone and we throw it in the middle of it. What happens? Well, you have this wave that travels out, right? That's kinetic energy. That's the delivery of the energy. So when people say, you know, I've shot people before and this sort of thing, and I've never seen a shirt do that.
I would check it out, Colton.
Okay. Right. You've seen people shot before and you've never seen a shirt move. It's gonna move when you get hit. All right. He's wearing kind of a loose fitting t-shirt. So when he is hit, it balloons out like this. And when it balloons out, that's that energy transfer. There's a great old black and white scene. If you've never seen it, look it up.
Okay.
It may have been done up in the Northeast, like at Coney Island. I don't know. The guy that catches the cannonball. Have you ever seen that?
The guy that catches.
Have you seen that before?
Of course, you've seen it.
Okay,
yeah.
So
I knew it was coming.
He's standing, this rather rotund man, and he was known.
Rather rotund.
Rather rotund.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah, it was fat as hell, and he was healthy in a 30s and 40 cents.
Oh,
when you see him hit like that with that cannonball, you can see the ripple effect.
All right, let's get that on the screen. That's pretty good.
That it actually travels out. Okay, well, that's kinetic energy, and it disperses throughout his body.
Why is he doing this to himself?
He didn't have a smartphone, and so he couldn't entertain himself. This is how people entertain themselves.
He wanted views, clicks, likes, and money. That's why he was doing it. This guy was YouTube back before YouTube didn't exist. This is social media and content creators old school. But he was willing to put his life on the line because this is crazy. I remember seeing this as a kid, by the way. It wasn't, you know, this was long before I was a kid, but you know, I do remember seeing this video when I was younger.
I thought he was getting time off his sentence.
Yeah, no kidding. It's rather impressive though. And you can, here he is. This is a sledgehammer thing.
All right, you kind of did him dirty though. You made him sound like a real fat ass. He's like kind of like old school.
He's old school.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to throw some hands with you.
Yeah, like Robert Mitchum, you know?
Yeah, look at that. I mean, he's got some liver protection.
Look at this.
Yeah, this guy's kind of a savage. You really did him dirty.
It wasn't my intention.
Okay.
My apologies.
Look at that. He's like,
to all of his to all of his kith and kin. I didn't mean to.
Okay.
You know. Anyway.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help.
Ballooning of the shirt, and you have this transfer of energy that takes place, and that explains the ballooning of the shirt. And if he had not had a shirt on, and you were watching this in real time, you could probably see, and you were watching super slow mo, when it strikes this area, you could see a ripple effect in the skin as well. It'll kind of balloon out like that. And then the elasticity will bring it back in. So once it has created the defect, which is the hole, it begins this cavitation, you know, as a round is traveling through the tissue. And if it fragments, and that's called, you have what are called, there's an old term referred to, it's not old, but some rounds, 5.56 was known for this in Vietnam as a frangible bullet. So
wait, say that again?
Frangible bullet or projectile. Yeah. And on impact, it kind of shatters. So you don't just have one projectile, you have multiple projectiles, and all the little vessels that are associated in that area are getting ripped and torn as this thing kind of cavitates through these structures in the neck.
All right. How far away again exactly was Tyler Robinson allegedly with
I've heard estimates. I've heard some people have said 200 yards, and then other people have said
See, Julian Dorey is a perfect example of most people in this. And trust me, I've seen other podcasts with him. He is 100% convinced that there's a government conspiracy at this point, and that's fine. But he's a perfect example of what we run into all the time. And that is these people that have, you know, a very kind of brief overview of the information. They don't know the distances. They don't know any of the particulars. They just know things seem weird, right? And then once they're introduced, once they feel that things are weird, you can introduce, they've been primed. You can introduce anything to them, and they're just like open to all this. They're ready to receive that. So again, it's a real problem when you're having a detailed discussion about this and you don't even know the distance. And there are people that are operating like that all the time. Their heads have been filled with junk, and all the particulars that would determine whether or not the things they believe are actually true, they don't actually know.
I've said 180, 160.
I want to get what the reported consensus from law enforcement is, if possible. That's why I asked it that way. So we'll pull it up just so we have it. Because what I want to get at is, and Deep's got it. What do we got?
So it's saying here that from Sergeant Jennifer Faramina of the Utah Department of Public Safety, it was 410 feet between the rooftop perch and the tent where he was. So they're saying roughly 415 feet away.
Yeah.
That's what, 140-ish?
It's too early from that.
Type yards, something like that?
138 yards.
138.
It's well within. Okay. So with a 30-06, there are people out there that, and this is with a scoped version of this. Okay. A scoped version of this weapon. He had optics on it. There are people out there that easily, I'm a horrible marksman. I barely qualified in the Army years and years ago. Yeah, I've got terrible eyesight.
Don't say that. I thought you were great.
No, I like looking at bullets. I don't like.
You look like a good shot.
Yeah, well, there you go. So there are people out there that could easily score the shot with an iron sight.
With an iron sight.
Yeah, with no scope on it whatsoever from that distance. Yeah.
Which leads to my question here, because that makes this even more relevant to me. With a 30-06 bullet from approximately 138 yards.
Yeah.
How does that not exit? And to take it a step further above my pay grade here, just going off what some other guys who have shot a lot of weapons in my life has speculated with before, how does that not literally take his head almost clean off his neck?
No. Over the course of my career, I've examined a lot of gunshot wounds, and particularly from high velocity weapons. Okay. Hunting rifles, AK platforms, AR platforms, SCARs. I mean, you name it. I've seen them, everything from 308, 7.56, 5.56, Win Mag, 300 Win Mags, 300 Blackout. I mean, you name it. I've seen, and the entrance wound is not, the entrance wound itself is not going to be blown out with every single case. It just doesn't happen. I think people are expecting to see, like, it's like the old Gallagher comedian up on stage with a watermelon. They have this expectation that you're going to take, this weapon and fire it, and the watermelon is going to explode. That doesn't happen with human tissue. So the elasticity of the tissue itself will absorb that round. Okay. Now, I think that, I don't know if people are wanting to see it or they want to try to understand it, because there's, you've got this kind of interesting dichotomy out there. There's certain people that I think that actually want this to be, they want to see like his spine hanging out of the back of his neck for whatever reason, for whatever their interest is. But that's not the reality in the morgue. When you go to the morgue and you examine bodies, this ain't Hollywood. So when
Can
you
I ask
have
a quick question?
Sure,
absolutely. Sorry, Joseph, I don't want to get lost in this and forget about this, but you're making me think about like the kinetic energy that you were relating and what that looks like from a ripple effect, and then where the actual entrance wound would be and what that could.
Folks, the vast majority of the population, what they believe to be true regarding ballistics, they've learned from television. This hyper exaggerated, sensationalized every single shot, and they think that's real. That's the reality of this, is that people get their expertise from movies and television. And I know it's disappointing. It's just not how it works. I've never seen anything, I've seen a lot of people shot. All right. And it's much less dramatic than what you think it is every single time.
Cause as far as like an explosion or not explosion. So please correct me if I'm completely wrong here, but if that pond example you gave where you throw a rock, if I throw the rock directly in the center of the pond, the ripple effect distributes in a circular motion all the way evenly across. Now, if I throw the rock off center to the right, a bigger wave ends up going over the rocks on the right, and the left, as it distributes across, gets less of an effect because the center is more. Yeah, you're not hitting its center mass, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And that's a ballistic term, and it's a weapons term that's used on the range. You're aiming for center mass.
So my question would be,
Mhm.
because he got hit here where the carotid artery is,
Mhm.
and it was on
And the
his
jugular
left, and the jugular vein, it was on his left side, our right, if we're looking at it.
Left
Is part of the reason that there wouldn't have been like an explosion or like head coming clean off the fact that it's hit off center, versus if he had been hit in the Adam's apple, perhaps it would have
in the larynx, this area here, the trachea, because as we can feel, this has got, it's cartilaginous in here, right?
Cartilaginous.
So a lot of cartilage. It's formed up in here. If you hit this surface, you might see more of a dynamic entry area, but this is rather soft tissue right here. It can absorb a lot. Okay. So you move to the left of the midline. And this wound, if you had, let's just say we had, I don't know how to say it. Let's just say if we had 3 cases and you had people that were shot, one to the left of the midline, one in the midline, and maybe another that is over far to the right over here or far to the left. All of these wounds are going to look different, dependent upon the actual anatomical structure and the delivery of that energy and how it affects that particular spot. Okay.
So going back to what you saw with Charlie, to summarize it, it is therefore, in your forensics opinion, very possible that he was shot with 30-06 from approximately 140 yards away, and that it did completely create a fatal impact upon hitting his arteries right there, but that it is possible, therefore, that it may not have made an exit wound, and that it is also, therefore, even more possible by that point that like his head would not have been taken off.
And let me tell you one more thing. So with the vertebral bodies here, we start up here at C1, right? C1 is called the atlas, right? So it's what supports our head, like atlas. So we've got C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. And so these are rather robust, this surgeon or this guy, this associate of his.
And what's really important about this, not only is obviously his professional experience, and that he has lots of experience looking at bullets, lots of experience at looking at the effects of those bullets, the terminal ballistic outcomes of those, but the fact that he doesn't have a dog in the fight, right? And chances are, before it's all said and done, I'm going to clip this up, and I highly suggest that you guys do the same thing. Clip this up, get the truth out there. No one has ever said, I definitely have never said, that it is 100% certain that Charlie Kirk was shot with a 30-06. My position has always been, I don't think it's not impossible. It's not impossible. And by the way, that was always my position, always going back to the beginning. Yeah, I was hung up on the idea that from what I saw and was interpreting, and by the way, a lot of other information coming in, that I thought we had a deflection off of a ballistic material. All right, that's where I was. But I never said that it was impossible. I did think it was unlikely, because I'm also smart enough to know that a lot of things can take place with firearms, a lot of things that take place with ballistics. Sometimes you just got bad rounds. I mean, there's a million different variables that are hard to account for in a single incident like this. That being said, once I learned about Martin Luther King, I did a deep dive on it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, this is almost the exact same wound pattern. All right. It did hit Martin Luther King in the mandible. It ended up passing through, basically, and hit him in the spine, deflected downward. But also, Martin Luther King was shot from 65 yards away. Literally half the distance, almost exactly half the distance of what we see Charlie Kirk. So there was significant amount more energy, potentially. But what we don't know is the muzzle velocity of that round that Martin Luther King was hit with. I think they do list the type of ammunition that was used, and maybe even the grain weight of that round. I'd have to look that up. I don't remember off the top of my head. But if we started off, we don't know what the grain weight of the bullet is. We do now know that it was a core lock bullet. So this is the terminal ballistic results are kind of expected, or it makes it more likely that these types of things happen. But we also don't know what energy we started off with in comparison between those two. We don't know what the muzzle velocity was of Tyler Robinson's rifle versus the one that shot Martin Luther King. So we could have started off with less energy. It's going to bleed off a lot of energy in twice the distance. So everything that we see is perfectly within the realm of possibility. Now, people will say, well, Gary, it hit Martin Luther King's jaw. That makes it like we just got to throw this out. I think that's ridiculous. What we don't know is that if it hadn't hit him in the mandible, would we have seen a exit wound at that point. I think it's illogical to just automatically conclude that would have been the case. But there again, we almost certainly were dealing with less velocity, less energy with Charlie Kirk when he was hit compared to Martin Luther King. So it is not outside the realm of possibility. And there again, then you start going down the rabbit hole of looking at pathology reports, the military reports that are available. All you got to do is look this stuff up. And then you look at Chuck Ritter, who was shot from 25 yards away, very similar. Chuck Ritter was shot 25 yards away with 7.62 by 54. Hit him in the spine, deflected downward. Guess what? He's still alive. No exit wound, and he's still alive. And then we look at Shane Hill. It was another case that I just found recently. Somebody sent to me. Guy was shot with a 30-06 from much closer distance. Hit him in the spine. No exit wound. He did die. But still, plenty of examples out there. And again, this guy is just giving you his professional opinion on this. This isn't Gary, which that's all I was ever doing to begin with. But now you got to assign like I'm trying to protect some sort of narrative. No, I'm trying to protect the truth and trying to provide a little bit of logic and reason in the midst of this chaotic, idiotic discussion that because it's just being completely corrupted with these narratives that have been proven wrong time and time and time again.
Is saying, it's a layer, healthy bones,
Superman,
whatever. He's a freaking human being. All right. Well, let's don't paint it in any other way. He's a human being. All right. And with this insult, this defect, there is a strong possibility that it is traversing kind of the trajectory would be from above to below. Okay. So from higher to lower, right? Mm-hmm. Possibly from left to right. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. It could have been straight back. So above to below, from front to rear. Okay. If it is traversing like this, okay, like this, there is a high probability that it hit one of the bony structures in the spine. All right. Remember going back to the neurological response that we talked about?
Yes.
Yeah. That would account for what we're seeing here as he kind of slips off to the left side. It's within those bony structures that they have, or immediately adjacent, they've recovered this round. One other thing that's going to be really fascinating at trial, and I don't know if they'll present this in the preliminary hearing, are going to be the X-rays. It's going to be a marvel to see.
So they've said that they're going to be putting those out.
I don't know if they will or not. It's common practice now. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they'd done a CT as well on his body. And
full CAT scan.
Certainly of head and neck. Yeah. Certain. We go back to the the Gabby case.
Mm. So one of the things that I don't know irritates me a little bit about this is this was filmed last Friday. It was released a day ago, yesterday. So on Monday, and they don't talk about what was actually revealed during the hearing. And I guess, maybe Julian Dorey and Joseph Morgan just aren't aware of the actual forensic evidence that was presented. I guess they referenced it some because they did reference the ATF report and what the ATF ballistic experts said, but there's elements of this that they could have found to be more definitive, and they don't reference it. Take it for what it is. We'll hit a couple super chats real quick. When I watched this, immediately thought of Gary for Clint Smith's 5 questions, especially the second one on the rifle. All right. The best part is when he makes Julian say Candace 3 times like Beetlejuice. He's obviously not a fan. Yeah. So just so you all know, I only watched probably 6 or 7 minutes of this, and I was like, we're going to play this. Like, we got to show this. We got to see what this guy's saying. But I did want to say most of it so I could actually have a genuine reaction to most of this. So there's very little that I've watched of this. I just knew it was worth sharing with you, and definitely more important than watching Candace. I will definitely try to get to Candace, see if we can squeeze some of her today's episode in, just so that we can keep track of all the lies that she's putting out. People like CK was shot with a 30 millimeter Vulcan cannon. Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. Fluids don't compress. So if the bullet entered thick blood, fluid area, muscles, tendons, bone, and blood. Yeah. So
hitting additional large blood vessels definitely exaggerate or assist with the hydrostatic shock wave, but you don't even have to. If you hit just all muscle, again, the body is made up of around 70% water. There's a ton of fluids in there. And as that bullet passes through that, it is moving those fluids out of the way. They can't compress. So fluid, water that is sitting in your tissue, by the way, and bones, by the way, that is sitting there at 0 feet per second, are suddenly accelerated to 2,000 feet per second, whatever it hits with, right? And there's some degradation once it hits. It's not going to, just because the bullet's moving at 2,800 feet per second doesn't mean that all those the fluids and the tissue are also moving at 2,800 feet per second. It slows down. It's transferring energy. It's not 100% efficient. So, but we have where a high caliber rifle, all right, is going to basically turn your own flesh and blood into your body's a weapon inside your body. That's what's taking place. And this is why, and it's that velocity that kills. All right, the statistics when it comes to handgun versus rifle rounds, 70% of people that are shot with a handgun live. 70% of people that are shot with a rifle do not. And it's because of that velocity. It's because of the hydrostatic shock wave that those rounds moving at higher velocities create. It just does unbelievable destruction inside your body.
Up there where she was found, they actually did a CT of her.
Let me hit some of these other super chats while we're here. Can you post again the facts about the vertebrae? Nate said when he was on with Phoenix, he said it is pretty damn strong. The ballistic gel has no vertebrae. Yeah, and again, not only does the ballistic gel not have no vertebrae, ballistic gel is not an analog for human tissue, period. Again, with the human body, we have variable densities. What we have with ballistic gel and what the reason for why it exists is so that they can get comparative analysis using the exact same medium. Just because that a round goes 12 inches into ballistic gel, all right, it does not mean that a round is going to go through 12 inches of human body. And then on top of that, like that depends on where. It might go further than 12 inches. It might go significantly less, and typically it is significantly less. There is no 1-to-1 ratio. There is no ratio that the FBI has ever published like, hey, you know what? 3 inches of ballistic gel equals 1 inch of flesh. And part of that is because, again, variability. It's dumb to think that is true to begin with, right? If you really think about it, it doesn't make sense. I've seen training footage of bullets traveling along the path of least resistance, along the path of least resistance. That's generally how it works. Some cops, military have seen it. Dudes have gotten shot in the helmet and the bullet wraps around the whole helmet. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. That's right. That's right. I could bore sight. And by the way, I have. It was kind of funny. The last time I was bore sighting a customer's rifle for zeroing, and we're at 100 yards. So this is literally the case, by the way. So I bore sighted, just looked through the bore, got it lined up with the scope, did that at 100 yards. And I mean, I was like a quarter inch off of zero. Now, I won't say that I do that every single time, but usually we're within a large diamond that we can, the targets that we usually shoot. So yeah, I mean, I could literally bore sight a gun and hit a man-sized target at 138 yards. No problem. I won't say it'll be 100% of the time, but most of the time. Also, the combined angle of the shooter's elevation, Charlie's body posture, put the round traveling downward to the shoulder blade area. Yes. Yeah. Look, I mean, Julian Dorey, like a lot of people, the only thing they know about ballistics is what they've seen in movies, and it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate, like, you don't realize that. Like, I'm very aware of what I don't know, and I try to be very careful about talking about things that I'm not familiar with. Because I mean, it just bites you in the butt every single time. You get so much because you don't know what you don't know. But not these people. These people. It was funny. Last night we were on the space, and Project Constitution. Old Colin came on, and Bronson. I don't know. I know that clip has been clipped, and it's probably worth showing. I don't know if you can find it, Jen. It was pretty hilarious. Bronson says, "Hey, Colin, you're talking about ballistics. You're talking about this because I actually I got Colin to admit, like, he didn't know what he's talking about. I forget what ballistic element. He was like, yeah, I don't know anything about that, but he's talking about ballistics as if he's a expert in this. So, Bronson was like, you're talking about all these different things. What is in your background experience, whatever else that allows you to have expertise on anything? And he's like, well, that's a lie, but it's the truth. Like, this kid is a basement dweller. And I say kid, he's a grown man. He's been to jail a few times for dealing fake drugs, among other things, stealing. But yeah, these people have no expertise in anything. They sit in their basement and they just freaking wrap themselves in Dunning-Kruger and just go out there and just spew nonsense. No, I mean, with such confidence too, with such confidence. And that's another thing about Candace Owens. Look, one of my first jobs was in sales. And I remember my boss telling me, he was like, Gary, when you're talking about these things, you got to sound confident. And he's like, I'm like, I don't feel confident. Like, feelings have nothing to do with it. Feelings have nothing to do with it. You can sound confident and not feel confident or even be confident, but you got to sound confident. And that's exactly what Candace Owens does. She sounds confident about everything. And that has a real effect on people. It really does. Like, the impact of that is actually profound. And when you say things with full, and it helps if you're delusional, it helps if you're a narcissist, because you think you know everything about everything. And she does. She does. Anyways.
And she was in a moderate state of decomposition. They did a CT on her remains, and it's becoming very very prevalent. We've always done X-ray for people that could afford to have portable X-ray. You know what the beauty of X-ray is in the morgue? One of the reasons that morgue photographs get excluded at trial is because they're regarded to be very prejudicial because they're so gory with a lot of blood and all that sort of stuff. Radiographs are not prejudicial, and what it's going to show is a cavitated lead storm that will pass through here. If this thing fragmented, you'll see little bits distributed all the way through here. Those little radio opaque bits of metal traversing in whatever trajectory that they determined, and that still remains to be seen. And you'll actually see the main body of that round, that the biggest part that's intact, where it's lodged. If they didn't just do a standard X-ray and they did CT, dimensionally, you'll be able to actually appreciate the track of the wound, where it actually sets up. So it takes it to a whole new level, and those will be prominently displayed in the court.
Okay. Well, this gets to that actual process that I referred to earlier of what happens once someone is murdered and there's a homicide in the state of Utah, and how the autopsy happens, where it happened.
I want to show you guys this because this came up last night in the space as well, and I think it's worth people understanding because there's a lot of people that have never seen this before. But this is what a lead storm looks like, and this is from a rifle round. This is exactly what you expect to see. Here's another one right here, another rifle round. We go down here. Look at this. This is a gunshot and blast wounds. Those look very uniform. I'm sure that is a shotgun blast. Same thing with here. And, there was a guy in the space saying, Gary, why didn't they recover? I don't remember. He's saying that the ATF experts said they only recovered 20% of the round. That's not super surprising to me, but I don't remember her ever saying that. I need to look that up. But regardless, what the ATF expert, obviously they're going to pull out the largest chunks possible. And what's really important to the ATF when you're doing any sort of matching the round to the barrel using tooling marks, what you want to recover is the actual jacket. That's what's going to allow you to do this. Like, all these lead fragments, like, it's not important. Like, you're not going to get anything from those. And this guy was like, no, that's if you're doing a high profile case, you're going to pull out every single fragment. Like, no, they don't. No, they don't pull out every single fragment. That's not what they do. And he's like, no, that's, I was like, well, show me some sort of protocol. Like, send me something, some evidence that says that's what they do every single time. Oh, and he was like, no, well, Grok told me. I'm like, okay, well, I looked up Grok. I asked this exact same thing. Hey, you know what? During a homicide case, if someone's shot and they're trying to match the bullet, is it normal to pull every tiny little fragment of lead or the actual bullet out of the body. It's like, no, that's not common at all. And again, what are these little fragments? You know how much damage, you know how much dissecting you're going to have to do to get all of these tiny little fragments out of there? It's impossible. It's ridiculous. All right, you're going to have to peel this person open to get all of this stuff. Now, what I will say is, and this is a homicide case, right? Well, I mean, at least when we're talking about Charlie Kirk, it doesn't matter as much. Now, if they'll probably do that or spend a lot more time doing that if this person lived through this injury, because we're dealing with lead poisoning at this point. But I mean, they are not going to go through, because all of this, they're never going to recover it all. And on top of that, none of the stuff is going to be material to the case itself. They're going to get the biggest fragments they can, do the least amount of harm. And by the way, they're paid by the hour. All right, these are government workers. They're not going to spend all day getting every little tiny fragment out of the body. It's ridiculous on its face. So I don't know, just something to think about. There we go. Madman says, shot a 400-pound bear with 300 Weatherby mag in the neck. 300 Weatherby is no joke. No exit. Hand-loaded, hot, about 44 to 4,500 foot-pounds. 30-06 is around 2,900 pounds at, like, that's like the pretty much the peak. Pretty much the most performance you're going to get out of that is around 2,900 pounds. Listening to these ballistic experts is going to give me an aneurysm. Exactly. Cavitation, neck expanded, took out brainstem immediately. Arms came up, thighs came together, equal brain death. He was gone immediately. I agree. This is exactly what I said literally the day of. I told my wife before we, she was like, oh, guess what? I told her what happened. Showed her the video. I was like, he's gone. Without a doubt, he's gone. Like, gone. And she, I don't know, she communicated with me somehow. I don't remember. This was, 10 months ago. She was like, hey, they just announced that he actually has a heartbeat. I was like, I don't care. I don't care if they got him at the hospital and they have a mechanical, I don't know if they have him on life support. I don't care if his heart's beating on its own. Like, he's gone, unfortunately. And unfortunately, that was true. But I've seen enough death to know what it looks like. And he was completely gone before he hit the ground, unfortunately.
Who's involved?
And now these vultures are picking over his dead body and exploiting his death to push narratives that he never believed, to destroy his legacy, to destroy his family, to destroy his wife. I find it disgusting. I find it repulsive. And not only, like, if none of that was true, if they were just out spreading lies that they were even profiting off of, but they weren't doing that, I would still be doing this. But my God, because they're doing that, because they're putting these victims and re-victimizing them, and it's not enough to say that Erica and TPUSA and all these other people, and even the federal government or the military were involved in this, and they killed Charlie Kirk. That's not enough. Candace Owens, Baron Cohen, they also have to insinuate and make every single one of their believers believe something even worse. And that is Erica Kirk is involved in child sex trafficking. Like, if you don't think that's inciting violence, and with zero evidence, there is not a scintilla of evidence that you can give us that indicates any of those things. But they know that it's sensational. They know that they're dealing with their viewers that are evil, that revel in the most vile activities possible. They just love this stuff. They eat it up. It's because it's demonic. It really is. And it's like a form of pornography. And it's disgusting.
One of the things that was weird to me, and this is why I called you a few days after the assassination, was how quickly his body was at least preliminarily prepared and by a first funeral home in Utah to then send it. And you explained this process to me to the final funeral home that was going to handle all arrangements in Arizona, where he's from. But I was looking at it at the time. I'm like, okay, he shot at whatever it was, like 12:30 p.m., something like that, local time in Utah. And then based upon when we saw JD Vance go and help hand off the body, and we knew that the family had spent time with the body because Erica Kirk had released some interesting social media posts over the casket and stuff. We knew that was around 5 12:30 p.m. Eastern time the next day, and they'd been spending time with the body in the afternoon before. And basically, I got it down to like, okay, he shot at 12:30, and the funeral home was obviously working on him and embalming him that morning, like the next morning, which is less than 24 hours. Like that part was clear to me. And so I called you at the time because I'm like, well, Joseph Scott Morgan's got to go to with this. And I said, okay, as a total novice here, that seems a little weird to me. Is that weird to you? And at first you explained it and you said, it doesn't have to be. No, I'll tell you why. And you proceeded to take me through the entire, I think you said it like this. You're like, Julian, are you aware of the chain of custody and command in the state of Utah when it comes to an autopsy? And I'm like, do I sound like someone who's aware of what happens? And you're like, no. And you then explained to me, gave me a play-by-play like Al fucking Michaels in his heyday as to where the body goes, what office it goes to, who's in the room, you had some people by name, I think at the time, they're supposed to be in the room, how long an autopsy like that could or would take, what time they'd be working on them. So if you don't mind, let's just start there. Can you re-walk everyone else who wasn't on that phone call that's listening right now through what that process is supposed to be specifically in Utah for the body once it's determined he is dead, the doctor has called it, and now he's handed over? Yeah.
I've got a little preamble here though for this.
Please, I love a good preamble.
Who doesn't like a good preamble? State of Utah has not had a coroner since 1972. Where's the camera? Since 1972. No coroners in Utah since 1972. Does everybody understand that? Good.
I was watching that.
Now that dumbassery is aside.
You know, when the hair gets flicked back, it's about to go.
Utah has a state medical examiner's office, highly regarded. Okay. These are board certified forensic pathologists. You say, well, Morgan, you're splitting hairs. That's merely semantics. No, it's not.
It's not.
No, it's not, because coroners are elected. Medical examiners are appointed. In a lot of states, you don't even have to be a physician to be a coroner. Matter of fact, there are some states where all you need is a GED. Okay.
That's not reassuring.
No, it's not. We could do an entire episode on the coroner system.
Okay.
But I digress. They haven't had coroners in a long, long time. Okay. They understood that they needed a state medical examiner's office. And this is why this is so critical in this case, because it has been stated by a rather prominent person out there that the coroner, this is their words, was inexperienced. Okay. I don't know really what that means. I don't know where that data came from, because they don't have coroners. I don't know. I don't understand why that term would have been used. It shows a certain level of ignorance. Maybe that was intentional. I don't know. But the way the process would work is that his remains, Charlie Kirk's remains, would in fact be turned over to the state medical examiner's office. Okay. They would take him to their closest state medical examiner facility, a fully equipped forensic autopsy suite. Okay. That will have x-ray. It's going to have all the instrumentation they need. And most importantly, it's going to have a board certified forensic pathologist, not an elected coroner.
Is this the one in Salt Lake City specifically? So everyone gets taken to Salt Lake City?
Yeah, unless they have some satellite offices.
Okay.
I know that I covered, I don't know if you remember the Idaho cases with Chad and Tammy Daybell. Chad Daybell, it's a long story. Anyway, Tammy Daybell died in Idaho, and her body was taken to Utah.
Interesting.
And they had to exhume her remains in Utah. Not a real good job of her death investigation up in Idaho at the time. She turned out she was probably poisoned, and she was embalmed. And these people are responsible for a lot of deaths. And it's this guy's wife, Tammy. Anyway, the Utah State Medical Examiner worked that case. I'm very familiar with them. And
personally,
all right. This is a good question. We've covered it multiple times on multiple different areas, but again, I know, like, first of all, if you're not watching every single show, you're wrong. Make sure you watch it. That being said, I understand that not everybody can. So M. Quisenberry says, one question. Does anyone know the answer? The RP 30-06 Springfield ammunition, empty case, blah, blah, blah. The ammo box or boxes in the safe, Tyler Robinson core locked. What grain? 150 grain, the most common. Has this been confirmed? All right, so it has been confirmed because we see what it is. And by the way, well over a month ago, and I think before that, I was like, I think what it's going to end up being is 150 grain core lock. When people were saying, it's probably this, it's probably that, I went ahead and went out on the edge there and was like, all right, here's what I think it is. But that's what it ended up being. All right. We don't know the bullet weight. I agree with Quisenberry that it is most likely 150 grain. So this is the actual photos shown that we have. All right. So this is the information that we have right here. This is exactly what we'd expect to see with Core-Lokt. But on top of that, we also have the unfired rounds as well. And we do have pictures of that. And this is where we can identify exactly what it is. We know it's Remington. The only type of Remington ammunition that looks like this, we can see this blunt nose, and it's clear to me that there's some lead pushing through there. So we have a soft point, which is exactly, this is Remington Core-Lokt. And I agree that it's going to end up most likely being 150 grain. Could be something else. It can't be 125. The projectile, going back to this, the projectile 125 is shaped completely different. So it's not 125 grain. It's either 150. They do make it in 165, although that's more rare. And then they go up to like 185, up to like 200. So I think what we're going to find out is that it was 150 Core-Lokt. And based on this is exactly what we'd expect to see with a Core-Lokt bullet that hit bone, that went through flesh the way that it did. And this is what they have to work with. Of course, they're not going to be able to do any sort of testing on regarding matching it with the tooling method. So, they're using that jacket, the lands and groove impression on that jacketing, and they're matching that with specific tooling marks on the lands and grooves, the rifling of the barrel. They can't do that with this. They don't have enough of it left. And even if they bend that back, right, they roll this back to where they can get the back of it, then get to that. Folks, it distorts. Anytime that you're bending it back, it's distorting that. And I think this, to me, is one of the clearest indications that this whole thing, all the evidence isn't fabricated. If it was fabricated, all they have to do is shoot a round into some ballistic gelatin or something like that, and then present the round like, yep, we matched it, we're done. But no, they created the additional hurdle, all this, everything they fabricated, all the different people involved, all the different agencies involved, all the sophistication behind it. They created fake text messages. I mean, it gets so ridiculous. And the one thing they couldn't fake was just a simple, clean, easy matching of the round to the barrel, so that we can just be like, hey, case closed, done. And this is what people went with. Clearly, the ballistics expert said it is not, they can't confirm this, but it's not excluding it either. But what people went out and said immediately was like, this proves that it wasn't the gun. It proves that's not what happened at all. Yeah, this stage. There we go. Is it inconclusive?
In the community in forensics, it's very small.
Right.
So you're aware of the quality of work that's turned out by particular offices. This is a stellar office. Okay.
Thank you, Sandra, for becoming a member. We appreciate you.
Everybody there, most people, of course, every office is going to have its own personality, but the people there are highly trained scientists. This is not an elected coroner that's doing this. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay. Because the fact that came out early on, just like the tweet that you showed me, or whatever the hell they call it, post or whatever, I don't know, the tweet posting, whatever they call it now.
We got Joseph off hashtags now. He's not doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. God bless you for that, by the way. It's important to understand that, you would have had reliable professionals that would have taken charge of his remains at that point in time. Why was it done so quickly? Well, this is not like you've got a guy that has got multiple gunshot wounds. His body is riddled with all kinds of trauma. This is a single gunshot wound. At least that's what they're believing, when his remains arrived there. It's a pretty simple process. I mean, right. It's a homicide case. All right. I don't, people throw around this term assassination a lot, right? Okay. If you want to call it an assassination, it's fine. But the state of Utah is not going to prosecute an assassination case. This is a homicide.
Right. Yeah, that's how it's categorized.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to look at it. So they're going to process this case just like they do every other case that they handle. And there's a certain procedure that they go through. Now, what might kick it up another level as far as speed is the profile of this case. They want to be as thorough as they possibly can and have as many people in the room. I can assure you that it wasn't just the medical examiner and a technician and a photographer that was in there.
Could you understand why people out there, because by the way, I checked this before, they still haven't gone through the exact details of what the chain of custody and command and what it all looked like yet.
Right,
maybe that'll come out in the trial. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But like, could you see why people who live in a country where they literally didn't do that correctly with a president that they whacked in 1963,
absolutely.
which I know you've covered that case anyway,
yeah.
you know, why they might be like, would they have everyone in the room for this if they wanted nothing to see here?
Yeah, in Kennedy's case, they had every damn person in the room, right? It was just all the wrong. It was all the wrong people.
That's right. They had LeMay smoking a cigar over his body. And
right. But when you look at RFK's case, Dr. Tom Noguchi, he had 8 pathologists in the room. I think maybe 9, including one of the guys that showed up late for John F. Kennedy's autopsy. That was wound ballistics guy that they forgot to consult the doctors there. Yeah, forgot. They flew, Tom Noguchi knew about this. So he flew them out to California. He locked that down. They say that RFK's autopsy was arguably one of the best forensic autopsies that has ever been performed. And it's because the community's really small. Tom Noguchi saw what an abortion JFK's autopsy was. And he's like, this is not happening here. This is not happening. And so he brings in a whole team of actually qualified people to observe that autopsy. And no, you don't have generals sitting around smoking cigars,
right?
You know, and doing whatever. And people that are not credentialed to be there, they don't do it in an amphitheater. You know, we talked about that. You know, with JFK, I think there were actually stands in there. You know,
it was like an episode of The Nick.
Yeah,
you know,
it's absurd. So in this particular case, they're going to follow standard procedure relative to the autopsy. They will have done a thorough external examination. They will have collected his clothing. There was some kind of surgical intervention. Remember, the surgeon makes a comment about he's seen the moose and the elk and all of that.
Right.
So they would have had to have collected his clothing, Charlie's clothing, because all of that is going to have some trace evidence value. Okay, I'm going with what I see on camera. I'm going to examine this clothing. They would have collected his clothing if it was cut away or pulled off of him. That will go into evidence. I mean, everything that he was wearing, okay, period. That may or may not be brought to the morgue. My suspicion is if it was at the hospital, crime scene people would have gone to the hospital, collected said clothing, and entered that into evidence. Sometimes the pathologist will say, I want to see the clothing. You know, of course, in the case of JFK, I think those quote unquote pathologists, these Navy guys that did the autopsy on JFK, they didn't see his shirt for like 6 months.
That's helpful.
Okay. Anyway, times have changed. The evidence would have been collected relative to that. They would have done a thorough external examination on Charlie Kirk's remains. They would have done all of the external imaging, everything, whatever radiography, regarding X-ray, they would have done. If they did a CT, they would have done that. And he would have done the pathologist would have done, or she would have done all of the external measurements. We do things like with a defect in the neck, they'll do the distance from here to the center of the defect to the top of the head, how far to the left of the midline it would be, since it would be on the left, how far from any other kind of anatomical feature like, we'll say the sternoclavicular joint that sits right here. How far superior is it to this point? So you kind of triangulate it to get an idea measurement wise. They're going to examine the back of the head, see if there's any trauma back there. There's many times, and I've actually had this happen. I wrote about this in my memoir, a chapter called The Earache, where I had a kid that was shot with an AK-47 in a drive-by, and a round came in through his jaw and lodged right behind his ear, and it was partially hanging out. And sometimes you'll palpate that area and you'll feel the round just beneath the surface. It won't completely exit. That was an AK-47 that I just mentioned, 7.62 by 39. And that is lodged. His had partially exited right there. And that went through several bony structures there, went through the jaw and then through the base of the skull right here. So back to Charlie Kirk, if this round is sitting back here, they still can't appreciate it, but they will take these radiographs, all the imaging, they'll put them up on a board, and they're going to look at it before they ever pull out the cold steel to do the autopsy. And they're going to look at this just like a doctor would relative to a fracture before they go into surgery.
All right. A couple things just to get my timeline right.
Yep.
He's declared dead. What was it, Deef? Maybe somewhere around 2:30ish local time, something in that area. Okay. When a homicide victim has now been worked on officially in an emergency room, he is declared clinically dead. The doctor stopped working. I would imagine very quickly the medical examiner's office takes custody of the body. That's fair to say.
Yeah, that body is the biggest piece. The body, no disrespect, but that body now is evidence.
100%.
Period. Yeah.
Okay. And we laid out that the office where in Utah this usually takes place is in Salt Lake City. Okay. what was it? Provo, Utah, where he was shot?
Mhm.
Is that the name of the town?
Yeah.
How far of a drive from Provo to Salt Lake City is it, Deep? Let's look that up. I don't want to miss any details because, we'll get lit up for that.
Yeah. Right now.
Okay. I want to say it was at least a few hours. I just haven't looked at this in a little while.
It's 44 miles away, so
Yes.
it's a 44-minute drive.
Okay, so that's not that bad.
No.
So Provo to Salt Lake, meaning they can get the body there in like an hour or less.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that puts us at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that. They would start with, in your experience, especially for something high profile like this, they'd start working on that pretty quickly, right?
They're going to get geared up. They're going to go in probably immediately and begin to work this case.
Okay.
And as quickly as they possibly can, they'll set everything up and be ready to rock and roll. And all principals that are involved in this case, it's always been my preference. I always invite, even though they don't take us up on the invitation, you'd be surprised. We always want the police there. And we also want their own photographer there, in addition to the morgue photographer.
What about a video? And I mean this dead seriously. What about like a videographer or something like that to actually capture these days?
Yeah, I guess videography could be useful, particularly now with the digital world that we're in. And you would want as much documentation as you want too much. As a matter of fact, you want to do this because here's the thing. It's like, it's like you get one swing at it. And because once his body's gone, it's gone. Okay.
Right.
So you have to touch all of the bases relative to this the first time out, or you're going to run into some major problems. Ridiculous, but swabbed his hands for gunshot. Yeah, for gunshot residue. Yeah, like in any gunfire related case, many times you'll bag the hands of the victims, and just to do it to say that you've done it, they would do that sort of thing. And
for a one shot victim, it's not like there was 40 shots or stuff like that. For one wound area overall.
Yep.
And everything you know about the case, let's start here. How long do you think a full, proper, we got everything we need autopsy would have taken to do?
For a skilled forensic pathologist, no longer than probably 3 hours.
Okay, that's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
So now, including like the residue thing, can you just go through every single thing that they would have done?
Yeah, sure.
Like if you were in charge
of this, okay, they shoot the tool you're going to do. Internally, probably because with a digital camera, you can just go an injury right here. And pathologist is different in the order in which they want to do stuff. But you do all of the external stuff first, and disease in his body. Many times, they will move to the left of the body if the wound is here. Okay, and in profile, they're going to take a shot of the body with a trajectory rod coming out of it. Okay, and it'll give you an idea if it's what they're saying it is, and again, hasn't been confirmed yet, right? We don't see that report. It should have an indication of the rod being pitched up like this. So if he's in this position, seated, right, and he is shot, enter right here, above to below, the rod is going to pitch up like that, and you'll see that demonstrated at autopsy. Here's the question. If they have that image, is that something that they would show in court? Well, that might be rather prejudicial, right? But it'll be a reference point, for the DA, the defense would see these images, that sort of thing. And they're going to move to try to get a lot of images excluded. So you'll take it from the left side. You'll also take it from the right side.
What's the legality of getting images? Like how, as a defense attorney, can you get images of, say, an autopsy that's professionally done excluded?
Oh, I have sat, that's a great question. I've actually sat in a 3-day hearing with images. I think this is a long, long time ago. This is back in the 80s. I had a guy had a triple execution shooting. It was a organized crime group out of Korea that executed a father and his 2 sons. And then the shooter tried to shoot himself and blew off his chin and the tip of his tongue and the tip of his nose, and he survived. He actually went to trial. I was involved in that nutty case. Anyway, I think we had, get this straight, it was close to 1,600, 1,800 images. And defense had filed a motion. I feel like it went on for 3 days. That's an old reference. Okay. All right. I'm old.
Gotcha. Steve's an old soul.
I'm an old soul. Yeah, there you go, dude. You know Mom Kettle. Okay, there you go. So anyway, they're used to sitting at home, and about as close to a crime scene as they ever come is the ID channel or oxygen.
Law and Order.
Right, yeah. Now they're in a courtroom and they're sitting on jury, and you've got blood everywhere. You've got organs that are being demonstrated. You've got traumatized bodies, all these sorts of things. That is going to be incredibly impactful on their psyche.
That's right.
So will it prejudice them? And that's what the defense consistently argues in photography cases, in cases involving images. That's going to come up in this trial. I don't know when it'll be done, but they'll talk about what images will be admitted or allowed. And the reason I think that this is a salient point is because so many people want to see. so many people want to know, and they want to see every jot and tittle of information that is out there. And there'll be certain things that are viewed in court and that won't. Now, whether or not those will be broadcast to the public, they have not allowed. They have a single camera guy in that proceeding right now, and there's certain things that they block out, when they're discussing them in open court. So if you think that's intense, wait till it gets through the trial.
Yeah. I think so. Going back to the timeline though, of like the autopsy, it would appear to me that they could have been done everything to your satisfaction by maybe 8:30, 9, 10 that night, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you also explained to me, because I'd been unfamiliar at the time. I referenced this earlier when I was giving that preamble, but you explained to me that, like, do you know how funeral homes work when it's out of state and things like that?
All right. And to give you all some reference, so he's basically saying the evening of the 10th, the day that he was shot, so 8 or 9 p.m., they could have had a complete medical exam performed and finalized. And, there's been a lot of talk about how tight the timeline was between when J.D. Vance basically picked up his body. And then, by the way, it was the following day. So just to give you a timeline, I'll just throw this up here. The shooting was September 10th, 2025, 2023 p.m. Post-death handling, and then flight to Air Force 2 on September 11th was around 2:30. So again, there's plenty of time there. And during this time, of course, people were saying, oh, there's no way that they could have had time for a medical exam. There was no autopsy performed whatsoever. And it's just untrue. And these are the things that poisoned the well early on. And here we have a forensics expert that knows exactly. He's clearly a pathologist, has done these types of things before. He's like, hey, 3 or 4 hours. So by 8 or 9 p.m., the very day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, was murdered, they could have had that autopsy done. So, and I know people don't like that. And they're like, here's the thing. It's like when you present this type of information, they automatically go in denial. It's like, oh, you're just a fed. No, I just shattered whatever paradigm. The facts shatter your paradigm, and all you have to blame is me. Or in this case, Joseph Scott Morgan. I bet a bunch of people are watching this like, oh, this guy's a fed. He's in on it. He's planted. He's getting BB bucks. He's paid by TPUSA. Like, they just can't accept reality. It's delusion. It's pure delusion, nothing more. Did they mention the full weight of the frags they got out of the body? I know they didn't get it all out, but it would be interesting to compare it with the standard bullet. I was looking for that during the entire hearing. We listened to the entire thing. I was paying extreme attention during. I might have missed it. Somebody on the space last night was saying they only got like 20 or 40 grains of it out. I don't remember ever hearing that. I'm gonna have to look that up. Great X Spaces last night. Well, thank you, Greg. Well, I think I might do one again tonight. I actually served with a man that attempted to end himself with a little 22 LR. By the grace of God, he survived because the bullet wrapped around his skull. So yes, bullets do weird stuff all the time. Agree. I have an uncle that did the exact same thing. Or actually, he was shot by his cousin, I think it was. The 22 round went into his forehead. Half of the bullet, or a fragment of the bullet, went up right into the ceiling. The other half of it stayed in his head. Bullets do weird things.
You said it's like an underground railroad, if you will. Like, okay, we're going to do this for you because we're going to be releasing the body to you. So as you understand it, it would have been perfectly normal for a funeral home right there locally in Utah to do the initial embalming to the standards that the Arizona funeral home would have wanted as far as like what they communicated to them, and then release the body to be able to be put back to Arizona. That's all perfectly kosher.
I'll give you an example. You familiar with FTD, the floral service? FTD.
You know, tell me about this. Yeah.
Funeral homes are set up the same way, right? So if you go to FTD online and you order flowers for a person, those flowers are not going to come from, it's going to come locally, right? So funeral homes are networked like that. So they have people that they are networked with in one state, and they'll go to their
I just caught 3 bodies. How about you? Oh, 4. Wow, what a day. Good one.
So you've got this list, and they will contact, and they'll say, and
we just got distracted with some good stories. But I do think of TV shows in your future writing about one. Charlie Kirk, and obviously, before I say that, some of the points you'll see raised.
So the synopsis of what we just covered there is nothing that is strange about the handling of his body, the medical exam report and information, and the way that it was conducted. According to him, and he knows.
By a lot of people on the internet, obviously, like Candace Owens has raised these points and stuff.
Who?
Is that Candace Owens?
Who?
Candace Owens.
Oh.
If you say
Okay.
if you say it 3 times in the mirror, something gonna happen. Is that
I
what
don't
you're
know.
getting at?
I have, hopefully she won't
Okay.
appear, but go ahead. Beetlejuice,
Well,
Beetlejuice,
yeah, no,
Beetlejuice. Right?
I know, like as a death investigator, there's some things obviously that I guess she's done in her case, going through it, that you're like, I don't think that could happen, or things like that. But when you're looking at some of the circumstantial things leading up to his death, where she ties it to different people and looks at like, wow, that is real when I'm dead, or something like that, I do have to say there's some weird shit there for sure. You look at those text messages and things that were going back and forth. You look at all the people that he had stood by as it pertains to that issue, who in the last months of his life, he was like, yeah, I don't know about this anymore. Like, we got to stop this war over there. And they're like, no. And he got money pulled from him. And now you have like guys like Ben Shapiro, who Charlie's on record, like behind the scenes, he did not like him. He was not a fan of him. Ben Shapiro,
Hold on for just a second here. I'm going big screen on this one. All these things that this person laid out, you could go through my texts, you go through your texts, suddenly, you were no longer with us. I was no longer with you. And you could find the same, like you just described, normal people in business, friendships, relationships, especially someone networked like Charlie Kirk. If suddenly, Elon Musk died, could you imagine like all these people that he has these weird relationships with, that, people were trying to pull him one way or the other? Like, it's not even weird. This is exactly normal. And again, one of the things I always talk about when you're going to determine something suspicious, and again, I used to teach this for a living. I developed a curriculum for surveillance detection, and threat detection for Department of State Diplomatic Security. And one of the things that we used to teach was like, first of all, before you determine something suspicious, there's some steps ahead of that. First, you got to know the baseline, like what normal looks like. And when you go to a new environment, it takes you a while to adapt to that and figure out what normal looks like to begin with, because you might get there and everything looks weird. And then a lot of people associate weird with suspicious. Not everything that's odd is suspicious. It just isn't, or it's weird. Right. So like you have to determine that, and you need to have some sort of analysis and not just default thinking like, oh, I've never seen that before. That's weird. A great example of this, I'll just give you. So we used to do a surveillance detection course in Tyson's Corner out in DC area, Northern Virginia. And so we'd bring students, and we already had a bunch of people that were ready to do surveillance on these people. And it was really low level. Like we intentionally made it to where it was obvious for a lot of these people. Now, we also did some for higher trained folks that we were a little bit more covert about it, right? It was harder to detect, but for the most part, this was extremely obvious stuff. Like we had them following them around, allowed them to see them multiple times, all the things. But the point is we would go to like people that have never done anything like this before. So we go to Tyson's Corner and we give them tasks that they have, like shopping, like they have to go buy this at this store, they have to go buy this store. And we'd have people following them around. And their job was to detect them. So their job was to detect them and then ultimately be able to turn in a surveillance detection report and be able to describe them and just work on these basic skills. And it was so funny. People would come back when we're done and we're doing the out brief and they're going through their surveillance detection reports. And then of course we're giving them like an after action review of what they did well. And then by the way, we would actually bring in all the people that are doing surveillance on them so they can confirm. We'd read their surveillance detection reports to them. Like, oh, I thought this guy was 6 foot. He's actually 5'9" or whatever it is. Right. So we would be able to confirm or deny how accurate their reporting was. And it's always so off. Like they get everything wrong so often. But it was wild to watch where people were like, they would fill out these surveillance detection reports on random people. And they're like, Gary, like number one of the things they always said was like, oh my God, that was exhausting. For the first time ever, you're put into this environment and now you're having to use senses at a level that you're not used to. Like they're actually looking and being aware of their environment and analyzing what's going on as opposed to just like, like not know what's going on at all, which is how most people live their lives. So that becomes resource intensive mentally, and they're exhausted. And this is like a 3-hour exercise. It's not that long. But the amount of people that would get reported for surveillance, the people that they found suspicious that just frankly weren't. Like it's the first time they're actually paying attention to their surroundings, and they can't, like there's a lot of weird people out there doing weird things all the time. You just don't notice it. You just don't notice it. Another great example of this is when during the Charlie Kirk assassination, everybody was pushing the idea of this iPhone gun. And there is a video where it's off to Charlie's right. There is a kid, I think he's in his teens, like 12, 13, 14 years old. All this stuff was confirmed that this wasn't true. And I think even the parents came out like, that was my son. But right at the moment of the shot, we see this kid like doing this weird motion, just a coincidence. And people were saying that was a iPhone gun and that's where the shot came from. And the same thing, I saw this during Butler. When you start looking at all the different video footage in these large crowds, there's all these things that are happening coincidentally that look weird. They look weird. People are doing weird things all the time, constantly. And there's just a lot of weird people out there that like, you can't even explain some of the things they do, but it doesn't mean it's suspicious. And this is exactly what Julian Dorey is describing here. It's like, if I analyzed his phone, suddenly we just pretended that he was gone. I analyzed his phone, I go through and like he's having an argument with this person, or I start talking to his people that he has business relationships with, or people that he works with, and like, hey, who are some people that would have an issue with Julian Dorey? It's like, he just broke off this deal with this company. Do they want him killed because he wouldn't advertise him for anymore? Or all this stuff happens all the time. It's the baseline. And for people to start picking through that and just subjectively determining that this is now motive for murder, it's a little wild. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying go through it, but to use this as some sort of evidence that something larger was at play, cool. Now all you got to do is provide evidence that something larger was at play. Find a different shooter. You can't do that. Find, I don't know, anything. I mean, at some point, the lack of evidence becomes evidence that nothing else happened at some point. And that's where we're at. Like, we don't have we have all of this evidence on Tyler Robinson. All this evidence that says he was the one that did it. We have not seen any exculpatory evidence from the defense at all. And I don't know, maybe we'll see that at trial. But we also haven't seen the majority of the evidence that the state is bringing against him. They're going to have cell phone GPS data. They're going to know exactly where he was when he was there. I mean, we already have that. He's basically narrated everything that he did in text message and in Discord chats. He's confessed multiple times. But this is the problem. Once you freeze something in place, and you take a person like Charlie Kirk, and you can find all kinds of weird, and then if you want to determine that they're suspicious, it's fine. But you got to have evidence of something else. And all the things, the anomalies that we point out, I would say if this was a conspiracy, there would be no anomalies. If it was so well executed that they got away, if there was a different shooter, how come we didn't see them? Like all of those things. What they wouldn't do is, shoot them with a different caliber or a different type of gun and then plant a 30-06 in the woods. Wouldn't do that. When we see the ATF ballistic report, they wouldn't come out and say, hey, this is inconclusive. Like that's easy. That's like the easiest piece of evidence to fake. And anybody could do it. As long as you, manufactured a chain of custody. It could be somebody else that shot a 30-06 into some ballistic gel or some other medium, recovered it, and handed it off to the ATF ballistician, right? The technician that's going to be testing those things. But we don't see any of those things. So at the end of the day, people have to start to accept that they have built suspicion on this mountain of bad conclusions based on incorrect suspicions and incorrect, just bad information. Well, I think that, a 30-06 will blow a man's head right off. You're wrong. But I have to reject the Fed narrative because of that. That's what would have happened because I saw it in a movie somewhere. So it just starts becoming so illogical that it's, and I'm doing my best, folks. I have good days and bad days where I'm just like, you people are so freaking retarded. And other days I'm like, look, I understand why you don't understand this. And I try to be more patient. But by the way, we get no grace on their side. All they do is demonize us. all they do is smear us when all we're doing is laying out the facts. Gary is about to step into what I did 6 years back when I did nuke stuff at Montana. JFK was assassinated in front of roughly 215 people with one camera. The footage wasn't released for over a decade. Charlie Kirk was assassinated in front of 3,000 people with countless cameras, viral in minutes. You're right. Like you can't compare what happened to Charlie Kirk. It indicates a level of intelligence that isn't very positive. If you immediately compare Charlie Kirk to what happened to JFK, like you are so dumb that you have to resort to like this default thinking, and you can't go through and it's not even nuance. I mean, the differences are so huge that you can't compare the two, and if you do, that just shows a level of stupidity. Why is the bullet jacket in the evidence photo so clean without any signs of going through a human body? I'm sure they cleaned it off. So to see those tooling marks, and if you watch the preliminary hearing, like they're looking at microscopic marks and matching them up. I've never seen that before. Didn't know what the process of comparing the tooling marks so they can match. And it's microscopic. So of course they have to clean those off. I mean, why? They're just going to try to do that with, God knows what on there. Of course, they're going to clean it. The cell phone data is going to be nuts. I agree. Ask why the bullet has no human DNA on it in pics. Why? They recovered it from Charlie Kirk. I don't expect DNA from Tyler Robinson to be able to survive, bullets heat up several hundred degrees, if not close to 1,000 degrees, and they go through an explosion that takes place. Those hot gases are traveling forward of the bullet. So, I mean, it's just baking any DNA. I mean, they know exactly who they pulled it from. What are they trying to DNA match to? I don't think DNA is going to survive down the chamber down the barrel of a gun. So, and again, these are questions that people don't understand. And I mean, I want to make fun of Spiderweb right now, but I'm going to hold off. So good question, Spider-Man, Spiderweb, whatever your name is. Were you scaling the rooftops like Spiderweb on September 11th or 10th? Candace's big audience really shines light on the mental illness crisis in America. I posted about that today. Not a single clear image of TR on campus. Yes, there are. There are. According to Benning Johnson, they could see that who it was very clearly outside of just. And by the way, Lance Twiggs was like, that looks exactly like Tyler Robinson. I mean, he was trying to obscure and hide his appearance. He was wearing glasses, wearing a hat. I mean, it didn't do him any favors. You can still see who that is. His own parents, even with crappier photos that weren't 4K. Look, and hopefully people realize this. Most of those photos and videos that we saw in the court, I don't know what resolution they were presented on the screen itself. But what I do know is when it's like 100 feet away, which is what people are saying, they're about 100 feet away and the camera is zooming in on that image, even if it's at 4K. And now it's taking up a smaller portion of the picture that the camera is producing, that image that the camera is producing that's now streaming to us. All right, that degrades that significantly. It's no longer 4K. We're lucky if it's 1080p right out of the camera. But now we live stream it over to YouTube. At best, it would have started if we captured the exact image at 4K. By the time it got to us, it would be 720. But because it's at an angle, and it's not the full 4K image, which is the aspect ratio that the camera is recording in. I mean, we're probably seeing something like a 620. I don't know what, between lower than 720, but we're seeing a highly degraded version of what they're seeing in court. And the parents identified him from much worse videos and photos that they released. Now you're a suspect, Gary. Blows a man's head off, probably not 2,300 foot-pounds of energy stopping in a human neck, never in a billion years. I mean, you just heard from this guy that said the exact opposite. I don't know what to tell you. I've seen guys hit with 300 Win Mag in the neck or in the head, and their head didn't blow off. As a matter of fact, we have a perfect example. Like, I'm sorry, Shane, you just don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Gary, you need to resurface that Candy plan to do this whole conspiracy with the Idaho 4 case. It was military operation, et cetera, but Kohlberger confessed, so he didn't get to and use Charlie instead. Yeah, no. She's live right now. Yeah, no. The DCI cleans the bullets to have no transfer of HIV or something, plus making it clean for people to use the microscope. There you go. There you go. We're going to cover a little bit more of this. There's some other elements that I think are really important. Oh, this is a good one. I think this is we'll play this part.
It was on a live stream, I believe, when Charlie Kirk was killed, acting like he was finding out all the information with the rest of us, like us being the world.
All right. So again, just because that someone is a forensic examiner and has a lot of information and knowledge, once we start getting outside of his area of expertise, we can expect for him to get some things wrong, and he does in this particular area.
Really don't like him. They had thousands of people that showed up.
Yeah.
And if you've got thousands of people that are driving to, I mean, I've never been there. Sounds like a lovely place, but you don't wind up here by accident, you know.
So what we're talking about now is the fact that there's no ambulance on site. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
But there's people that are specifically coming to this location to see him. If people are going there to see him, guess what they're doing? They're going to be videotaping. Mm-hmm. There's people that go and watch the Pope now go by. There's like this image of this little old lady standing on the side of the road. Have you ever seen this before? And everybody's got their iPhones out.
And only the lady does.
And the lady's like extending her hand out to the Pope like this. I mean, you know, however you feel about the Pope, but I'm just saying, most people don't live in the moment. They're going to videotape this. And so now you've got all of these lenses on this, and we don't even know how much of the stuff is out there, what they have at this point in time.
Yeah. Well, what we did see in some videos after the fact is the body's been taken out of there, and we all saw the video. Also, I don't remember this detail deep, but maybe we can look it up. Was there an ambulance on very quick? How close would that have jumped in? Yeah, that might have. That might.
You know what I'm saying?
That might have been what I saw because I'm remembering college.
But they were planning on 600 people.
But even for 600, you would think a bunch of people gathered. You know, it's like a sports event in a way.
Right, right. Yeah, for a school that size in particular, you would, and you would think that just for the elderly couple that comes out there and grandpa's got diabetes and sugar drops, or maybe he's got a heart history or grandma's got a heart history, at least you would have some kind of medical staff on site. And I think that's a good question. And that's something that would need to be answered. And I'm sure that maybe depositions or something that have taken place, some kind of interview, that question may have been asked of the security team, and certainly of the campus police, I would think. Yeah.
Because you would think, like, if they had been there, again, like if they're there, a couple EMTs and stuff with an ambulance, and they didn't jump in, that would be crazy. But you would think it would have been like, oh, well, this is our moment. Like, let's go, pull that thing up. Let's get rid of it.
All right. So we just heard some really good explanations. I mean, really good reasoning why we should have an ambulance on it, right? Like, old people are showing up. Yeah, sure. They only thought 600 were going to show up, but there could be other extenuating circumstances where somebody might be concerned about being taken away in an ambulance. The problem with that is, number one, there is no law, there is no rule. And when we see ambulances at schools, when do we see those? We see them at sporting events. Those ambulances are not there for the crowd. The ambulances are there for when a student gets injured. Let's flesh this out a little bit further. Well, first, and like, there's plenty of times when Charlie Kirk was at other schools where there's not going to be ambulances for all those reasons. They're not going to have an ambulance there for a debate and discussion. They're just not. Well, Gary, there's a lot of people there. Folks, number one, there's over 15,000 students on that campus on any day. I just looked it up on Grok. On average, about 15,000. There's like 48,000 students enrolled in UVU, which I was surprised. Let me just make sure I got that number right. 46 to 48,000 students that are enrolled in UVU. Roughly daily average on campus, typical fall, spring weekend, 15 to 25,000 people. They don't keep an ambulance on staff at the schools. There was no ambulance. I went to a high school, had over 5,000 people, 5,000 students. Forget about the faculty. There was just over 5,000 students back in Beaumont, Texas. So like, there's not an ambulance there. I've attended churches. The church that we used to go to in Tacoma, Washington area, there's like 7,000 people that attended that church every day. There was not an ambulance. Folks, the ambulances are typically required, or just, and by law, I don't even know that there's a law for this, but I know, and I've looked this up, there is no law that requires a student event or any event that's being held on campus to have ambulances there. That costs a lot of money to pay for that. And if it's not a contact sport event or a situation where they expect, again, they're going to do a risk analysis, right? Like, oh, like they're just talking. What's the risk? Well, what about an assassination? Okay, well, okay. Like there could be assassination, or there could be a shooting of anyone anywhere. We just keep ambulances around all the time. That's not how this works. So this has been one of those things been pointed out, like there should have been an ambulance there. There was a reason there was an ambulance there, because they wanted him to die. I mean, that's where that line of logic goes, right? Ultimately. And there's no precedent for it. It's not what they do. They're not going to keep an ambulance at a school for this type of event. The risk is fairly low. And the one in millions and millions. I mean, how many of these types of events have taken place, whether it was Charlie or somebody else, where, they're not going to have that. Now, if you have like a rock concert, I can understand. We know people get overheated. They're on drugs. They're doing a lot of crazy things. Or like, yeah, I can see that. And they're also talking about typically some sort of event where there's 10 times as many people. So there is no precedent for it. So if you're deciding, hey, this is suspicious because there was no ambulance, that's not a good reason. I mean, I'm if like any sort of event like this going forward, somebody wants to make a case, we should have an ambulance at every event like this. Fine, make that case. I still think that when you look at the incident to cost ratio, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense at all. So there's that. One of the other big things I wanted to hit on, here we go, is this right here. This has been quite a point of contention for a lot of people.
All the memories. That's what the people in Idaho said.
Right.
It's too ghastly. We don't want it here. And so they want to put as much distance. You use that term optics, which is a very popular term to use. The optics are really bad here because you're going in and you're disrupting the topography of this, right? No, it was much longer than a month later, but it's still, the thing hadn't gone to trial yet.
Agreed.
Okay.
They started paving over it 2 days later. Was killed. We now know it was some form of like an assassination, someone trying to kill him for his beliefs, however you want to define that. And there was a lot of things going on. And so we can pick apart, with hindsight being 20/20, every single thing.
Yes.
What I try to remember is that people in the moment are in shock. It's not like they showed up that day and they're like, well, he's going to get shot in 30 minutes. Everyone get in your place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the guy, I forget who it was, but whoever was like removing that camera that was lined up behind Charlie for content purposes, who then took it down and did something with it, he might hypothetically be in a state of shock where he's like, oh, yeah, I just moved this and not be thinking like, oh, well, that's kind of an important piece of evidence. Or
was he
it's
purposed?
like, was he a part of covering up?
Right.
Either question you're asking is a reasonable question to ask.
Yes,
Wouldn't you say?
Yes, it certainly is. And that, first off, let's think about this. At that moment in time, was anybody considering scene security? Okay. Because people in that crowd, even his security team, probably, I can't get inside their minds. And even the campus cops, they're not thinking about that as a crime scene at that moment in time. You're a lot more thoughtful in that period of time after the chaos has died down, where you're beginning to think, is this in fact a crime scene at that point in time? And then you go back and secure it. Well, it's everything that happens before that's declared that becomes a problem, right?
Yes.
So to the little, police department that's handling this thing, they're trying to manage a crowd. They're running about. They're not thinking about, well, we need to go and secure this point, this point, this point, and this point. That's easy for us to do in hindsight. And, and there are all kinds of questions that have been asked about a multiplicity of cases that are not exactly like this, but have some similarity. what were you thinking at the time? Why did you not do this at that particular time? Or why did you, in fact, do this? Do you realize how bad this looks? Well, I don't know what that guy's purpose was for removing a card or the camera itself,
Right.
whatever it was he was doing. But here's the beauty of it. I would imagine that that's going to have to be explained. That's why we have court, right? That's why we go to trial. And, some people have a particular interest in that. And I don't know that the answers that they'll receive on it to that point will satisfy them. But it really doesn't matter. It matters, does it satisfy the court at this particular time?
Right. Okay. What about the fact that he's on this platform area and the crime occurs, and then, as you say, at some point that day, within whatever it is, 15 minutes, or at some point, it's a crime scene.
Yes.
Why are they paving over it and getting rid of the whole place like 4 or 5 days later or whatever it was? How soon was, I want to get that right, Dave. How soon was it? But it was very quick.
Okay. My understanding is the institution did this for whatever reason, kind of like the institution had the Idaho house torn down, which I have a major problem with.
You talked about
and I've talked about that extensively. Yeah.
But that was like a month later or something.
No, it was much longer than a month later. But it's still, the thing hadn't gone to trial yet.
Agreed.
Okay.
They started paving over it 2 days later?
Started 2 days, yeah.
So you're...
No, they didn't. He was killed on a Wednesday. They started paving it over on Sunday after the crime scene was, it was no longer a crime scene. But again, this is just bad information that's constantly put out. And I think a lot of it's intentional because it confuses a lot of people and it creates suspicion where at least less suspicion would be created if they actually knew the facts. But almost all the time, like when these people are like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And they just gallop through a bunch of different things, like come to find out everything they believe is almost always incorrect. It just is. Colton says, what people do not know is that only the local government can have an ambulance on site. Charlie and his security team are all private citizen, like a band playing for free. This is not the president. It's a private person. The same thing when it goes to their security considerations. Like this is not, his security team were bodyguards. All right. They were not the Secret Service presidential detail that costs millions and millions of dollars per venue that they secure. Millions upon dollars, millions upon millions of dollars. So just different. Paul Franklin says, I don't have anything against any here, but I just don't see it in the way you guys do. You look nuts to me. I just hope the truth comes out. I definitely do not believe the story at all. I mean, the overuse of commas look a little nuts to me, Paul. I don't know what you're doing there. I don't know what punctuation is that's supposed to happen. But no, I hear you, Paul. Fair enough. Like the fact is that people just see things differently based on their experience, their worldview, everything else.
Upset at one that was, I thought it was a month. You're upset at one that was months later.
Yeah.
This one's 2 days later.
Right. And so my question is,
wasn't 2 days later.
What's your rationale for this? And you're looking at if that decision, which I understand or have an understanding at least, that decision was made by the university to do that. So that would tell me that the police, the investigative agency that was tasked with this, had released the scene. And why would you do that? Well, the only thing I can think of is that this is an open public space. How are you going to secure it? I'm not saying that they should have done it. I'm saying that's the argument that they're going to make. We don't have the ability to secure this area. So, but why so soon? Why so soon? Because the appearance of it, this is one of the biggest things for me. The appearance of it is, it stinks. I mean, it's bad practice. You're telling me that you have completely assessed this area within this short a period of time. That's problematic. What could you have done? Well, you could have cordoned off that area, secured it. I don't know. You could have called in any number of security forces that could have come in there, even if they're hired security. It wouldn't be the state police or somebody like, I guess if they wanted to throw resources at it, but maybe they didn't value it. Maybe they felt like they had assessed it at that point in time.
Crazy,
it is nuts.
I mean, you have to know that this was the largest political assassination in a long time.
Yeah. And one of the problems is that when you're talking about going in and paving an area, there's all kinds of prep work that has to be done for that, right? In order to facilitate constructing this, right? So it's not like you're it's not like you're going down to the local Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and you're getting paver. I think that they want to do in order to pound and that sort of thing. You're going in if they want it to look nice, which is what I think that they want to do in order to get rid of all the memories. That's what the people in Idaho said.
Right.
It's too ghastly. We don't want it here. And so they want to put as much distance. You use that term optics, which is a very popular term to use. The optics are really bad here because you're going in and you're disrupting the topography of this, right? Any kind of little nuanced area where you're doing elevations on things, for instance. Elevation is a big deal here because we're talking about trajectory of a round that's fired from a specific static point going down to that location. Now you've altered that. You're not going to be able to go back out there and restructure this thing.
Remember it's reminded me the first episode we ever did, 146, right after
one thing that was just revealed today.
And now that's the whole thing.
Excuse me. One thing that was just revealed today that I wasn't aware of is they actually did a full 3D scan. I think that reporting came from Piper on X. I'm going to try to find that, but they actually did essentially preserve the area as it is virtually. I'll try to pull that up, but I think that is important that I didn't know. So I'll pull that post up and we'll take a look at it.
Be a side tangent, but like they took the jury on a field trip to the location and they got to look at everything.
Yeah, they did.
They're never going to be able to do that.
No, they're not. And I talked about this with Idaho, comparing it to I'm drawing a blank, Parkland High School, where that moron went in and shot all those kids in that building. In Parkland, you know what they did there? They put up a 12-foot high fence and secured it for years. When they went in and they took the jury in there, that happened on a Valentine's Day. We talked about this.
2018.
Yeah. The pool reporters that were with them said that there were dried up roses and little teddy bears that were laying around. There was still blood everywhere, like old blood, degraded blood that was laying around. The jury walked into that environment and immediately they began to see this.
They were there.
They were there for that moment in time. And even the two press pool guys that were part, you're selected if you're going to be part of the press to go with a jury like that to document the things. They were shaken by it. And look, it's not the same thing, but when you look at,
I'm going to pause this right here and let's take a look at Piper's reporting. If you're not following her on X and you're on X, you need to go follow her. Piper_truth1 does a lot of great reporting all the time. I had not seen this anywhere else. Apparently, Andrea Burkhart talked about this, but they did preserve the site. So the state of Utah versus Tyler Robinson, FBI preserving scene of Charlie Kirk's murder via 3D scan. I saved this photo in September 2025, figuring it was them doing some kind of scan of the scene. I don't know if it's the Faro scan, but maybe someone can identify. And then confirmed Faro 3D scan. Poster up. So there you go. And here we see it. It is a Faro 3D scan. Apparently that's a 3D scanning device that is well known. I would put this in the solid confirmation category that Faro 3D scanning was used to preserve the crime scene at UVU. Physical evidence could easily be collected and processed in 3 days. The Faro 3D scan allows for investigators to visit the preserved physical scene at any time. Excellent find, Piper Truth. And also, if you're not following Jane Doe, that is another great follow. She presents a lot of good information all the time. So there you go. For people that think that's just disrupting the area, again, they had a high traffic area. They were trying to get school back in session on Monday. And I do think that there's good information. That's the story that they gave. Hey, you know what? They wanted to make this less traumatic for the students that were there. Not only that were attending school there, what are they just going to leave? Like, they have to get up the biologicals one way or the other. They have to clean up all the blood. And then there were a lot of students that witnessed that. And it is common practice to rehabilitate a site like that when you have a traumatic event. They've kind of talked about it already. There's plenty of other incidences where that was taking place. Mr. Exclusive on X also did a long reporting on this, and he allegedly had minute notes from UVU. Don't quote me on that. But what he did talk about was from an insurance perspective. You can understand, he talks about this at length, that essentially that UVU was concerned that they were going to be sued. And they probably should be concerned. Maybe they will be sued. I don't know. But this is standard practice, especially when that's a concern for insurance companies. So this is standard mitigation for that type of thing. Hey, you know what? We did our due diligence. We acted in good faith. We tried to make this as less traumatic, because that's what they're going to get sued for, right? That some sort of wrongful death, they have mental and emotional damages occurred, and it's your fault. well, look, we're doing our best to mitigate that trauma that people are going to have to relive. It's just a fact, so think about that. I'm not saying maybe they did something nefarious. I can't say one way or the other. Doesn't look like it to me. Based on that information, you decide for yourself.
The pace that they were moving to, I hate to use the word alter, but it is an alteration. Now, whether or not there's specific intent relative to this alteration, that can be problematic. And it's bubbling up. That's a legitimate question, and it should be asked and it should be answered.
Yeah. Now, Tyler Robinson and all this, we saw the video from far away of, someone that is purported to be him jumping off the building shortly after the shots would have fired out. I haven't seen that video in a while, but wasn't it like he had the broken up gun in his bag or something at the time?
Well, he had it wrapped in a towel.
Wrapped in a towel.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Again, we just when you start off with bad information that is not correct, you can't help but come to a bad conclusion. And time and time again, these people that believe this nonsense, they don't know the facts, or they believe things that have been told to them by people that intentionally lying. And I've seen it, and many of you out there have seen it too, time and time again. And you got to separate all that stuff and just assess what is true. And then, by the way, if you've already come to a conclusion based on bad information and you get new information, it's time to sit back and just all right, I believed some of these things based on this information. That information has changed. If you stick with the same conclusion, you're a moron, or you haven't even bothered to reassess, hey, what does this change? And you're not willing to change the conclusion based on new information that is relative and material to the conclusion that you've already come to. And that's what I see time is nope, I just refuse to believe anything other than this. Doesn't make sense. You're being manipulated. This is cognitive warfare. That's what's taking place here.
And he jumps.
They have designed and engineered for you to see things and hear things so that there's no other conclusion that you can come to. And they know, and we're going to talk about who the they is tonight with Matt Tardio. And we're going to talk about that, but they know what conclusion you're going to come to. And that is, the FBI did it. Israel did it. The Trump administration did it. The U.S. military did it. And it's going to cause fractures among the right. It is. And then the people like me and many others, not just me, that are out there trying to tell you the truth that you don't like to hear. They know, you're going to push us aside and be oh, he's a Fed. He's paid by the Jews, getting BB bucks. Just stop.
Looks like Spider-Man coming off the front of that building and falls to the ground. And they have videography of him egressing up the stairwell. And he's moving up and moving toward that spot. And he's walking with a noticeable limp, whereas they had videography of him earlier in the day in a different set of clothes, just kind of trucking down the street, with no problems whatsoever. The next scene you see, he's fully clad and he's walking with a stiff leg. And they are opining that the rifle was stuck down his pants. Now, I don't know.
Is that realistic?
I think that it's because the weapon I've seen that has the scope on it is rather robust.
Yeah.
Now, there was a screwdriver up there too, that was found up there. I've heard a couple of people say it would have been difficult to break this weapon down in this short amount of time.
Again, these people are operating on the idea that it was disassembled before he exfilled. That's not what happened. It's not what happened.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people break that down.
So I don't know. I don't really understand what configuration it was in, if there was an attempt to break it down. I've heard people say that the screwdriver was utilized to jimmy a lock, perhaps, or to have it in place to try to get access. But I've heard other people say that, you just walk up there.
Yeah.
It's no problem. One of my questions is,
all of those details are pretty important. And yes, you can just walk up there. You don't need a jimmy a lock. Yeah, I remember before I went to UVU, I was convinced of this, folks. I was like, man, this is really weird, because there are people in my comment section all the time. They're like, Gary, I know someone that works at UVU, and they told me you have to have a special access card to get on the roof. I didn't know the first thing of, any of this. I'm like, wow, that is crazy. That is super suspicious. And then I go to UVU and I walk up the stairs that are It's a public walkway that is, made. It's a walkway to go in between buildings that people can access, and you step over the rail. As I've said in the past, you don't even need arms to get on the roof. But this is the information that was being put out early on. So people thought that there was something suspicious. And even if you find out the truth, there's so many people who like that suspicion remains, even though the cause of that suspicion was eliminated. And now you're just looking for something else to verify the conclusions and the belief that you already have. It is, bias at its basic level. It's what, like, once we come to something, once we conclude something, once we believe something, we don't like to let it go, especially if we've been defending it online. Like, no, like you had to have a special access card to get up there. And now you're defending this position. You start treating it like a religion or politics, and you won't let it go. And folks, there are a lot of people, foreign actors, political actors, they understand that. They understand that psychology, and they know they can manipulate you. They know that they can flood the zone with a bunch of BS, palm guns, tunnels, French Foreign Legion, honeybees, Freemasons, Jews, Israelis, people in maroon shirts, Fort Huachuca, Mitch Snow, Brian Harpole, Rick Cutler, camera guns, multiple camera guns, drones. Like, once you've bought into any of that, you're done. They know. They've done their job. They know you're going to find out that's not true, but you've believed it because they manufactured, I don't know, some sort of evidence that caused you to believe that. But it wasn't true. And we don't have enough humility to admit how easily we're tricked. I want to get
all right.
this.
We're back. I got my boy Clint Russell on here. You remember him? He was on the show a couple months ago. Joseph Clint.
Hey, Clint.
Okay. So Clint has been all over this case, like from the beginning, going through it from the whole build up to it, to the actual case itself and some of the investigative issues that have been raised publicly. And Joseph, you and I have obviously now been talking about this for a couple hours, and there are some, obviously you would agree, there's a lot of optics issues with how they've talked about this publicly. Things have been handled. The floor, completely unanswered question.
The opportunity, and thank you for taking my questions, Joseph.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I've got way more than three or five, but I'll give you kind of the primary concerns that I have. I think first and foremost, what has really bothered people is the crime scene itself, the stage or the ground beneath Charlie that was within 5 days was
right
to the tune of 10 inches of soil was excavated, removed, and then immediately paved. That job was completed in Utah on a Sunday. The Sunday after the assassination, the highest profile political assassination of our lifetimes. People are really disturbed by that, including myself. And this is the other thing that you may not be aware of, but according to one of the, I don't know if he was the actual contractor or one of the employees of the contractor, but he went on a podcast and he talked about this came from the governor of Utah and the FBI to get it done, and I quote, quickly and quietly. So given your experience, I would like to know why in God's name the governor of Utah and the FBI would be instructing them to.
So just to be clear, I've talked to the person that he is talking about. And that person states that he was told, this is like third-hand information, right? Like the guys that were hiring him were like, hey, we're trying to get this done. The governor of Utah, the FBI wants this done. He doesn't even know if that's true. This was given to him, and he relayed that information. And now it's turned to this guy said that he essentially talked to the governor of Utah and the FBI told them. So it went from a second, third-hand story to a first-hand story as it's being presented. That is not correct. I don't doubt that he's telling the truth, that that's what that person that worked for the university said. But we don't know if that is even true to begin with.
In my opinion, destroy a crime scene in less than a week. So that's number one. So if you can give me some.
Yeah, Clint Deep is writing these down as well, so that when you're off, Joseph's going to go through them one by one. So keep going.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Number two. I'm not sure where to start. I would say I've had a really hard time understanding the nature of Tyler Robinson getting the rifle to the rooftop by which he took that shot. If you've looked at all of the surveillance footage, it is very hard to imagine a Mauser 98 is in his pant leg / in his backpack / under his shirt. Now, to be clear, I have seen the video from the preliminary trial where he's limping, seemingly. I still find it very hard to believe that there is a rifle stock that is in those pants. They seem to be very skinny.
What else is causing his limp? I mean, what's the other explanation for it? Matt Kester did this he recreated that whole thing. He shows you exactly how him and his son did it in, fairly skinny jeans. So anyways, like, what else is the cause of the limb?
Pants. So if you have any opinion as to how he actually got that rifle up there. Additionally, if the rifle was broken down, I'm very disturbed by how you would do so, put it all back together with a screwdriver within, I believe he had a 4-minute window before he goes prone and he takes a shot without re-zeroing the rifle and making sure it's actually, targeted in or sighted in from 140 yards out. That seems a little unrealistic to me. So I'd like your feedback on that. Also, the woman who lived across the street, who's, there's reports that Tyler Robinson went back to UVU. Very bizarre story. I don't know if you're familiar with this, so this would actually be interesting for you to unpack. But Tyler leaves, drives away 3 or 4 hours. It's a monster steak dinner after having Dairy Queen, so he eats 2 massive meals within a few hours, and then he drives back to UVU at midnight. Most of us assume that it was probably because he was trying to recover the rifle, assuming that he had dumped it. But the woman across the street who has the Ring camera, which allegedly catches Tyler Robinson exiting that vehicle, said that she believed that a bald man was driving that car, and that car had 4 people in it. Tyler Robinson allegedly worked alone. So if that's true, we've got a real problem on our hands, because why the hell were 3 other people with Tyler Robinson? And then I've got about 50 others. I'll go with, I don't know. Why did he allegedly meet with a TPUSA representative around 11 a.m. the morning of the attack? That seems extraordinarily bizarre. And also, why did TPUSA withhold that information from us, given that Blake Neff has now acknowledged that, or he hasn't said it explicitly, but he implied that he was aware that Tyler Robinson had met with TPUSA employees a few hours before the attack. I think that's worth unpacking.
Clint, did you also, just to add one in there, did you also have questions around timing or content of the text messages with Tyler and his lover?
I haven't really had as many problems with the nature of the messages. People saying it's too Shakespearean or whatever. It's like, people are weird, so maybe he's just a weird young guy.
Yeah.
But
People are weird.
I do have a problem with the conveyance of that information to the court.
All right, so I haven't. I don't know what his responses to any of this are. I just saw. I was flipping through this real quick and sliding through and just trying to see what was relevant to bring up during the show, because I knew I wouldn't be able to cover all of it. So I'm curious to hear his answers to this. Although he doesn't have firsthand knowledge, it's going to be speculation. But I am curious to see what he has to say. Craftsman Ethos says, my lady is an EMT only at colleges at sporting events. And we are in Orange County, California. Don't have the staff or the budget for speaking events. Yes. Where the university has held OSHA blood airborne pathogen standards. Where the university OSHA blood airborne pathogen standards. Sure. I mean, regardless of what standards there are or aren't, I mean, obviously we're not going to leave blood. And then if they tore up, maybe they brought some of the sod or whatever else for, I don't know if that's true, but obviously they would have to tear up some of the sod. There was a significant amount of blood. I don't know if those are based on OSHA standards or whatever else. It's just common sense that you're going to do that. What I will say is you do have the option to, you can hire someone like ServPro. I know ServPro does biological cleanup in the cases of death, things like that. I'm sure there's many other companies that do this as well. Or you could just, if you already have grounds people, I was actually having a conversation about this very thing before I got on the phone. Something horrific happened. As long as I could fight through the trauma, it was like, I don't know if it was related to me or whatever else, but like there's blood out in my yard that I want to get up regardless of the source of it. Sure, I can call ServPro and I can spend a bunch of money on that, or I can grab a shovel and I can take care of it myself. So I don't know what the standards are. I don't know what regulations determine how that can be remediated. I'm not sure. There you go. Gary, didn't you have an interview that was there who said he took his SD card to the police station and saw someone there to turn in the images from TPS SD card at the event? So they didn't go to the police station. What happened is after everything settled down, anybody that had information, including SD cards, they were actually brought up into a room and they were questioned. And anybody that had SD cards were turning those over to authorities on site that wanted to. Like, understand, folks, authorities can't just say, hey, this is a crime scene. None of this equipment that's yours is now yours. We're securing all this stuff. And we're taking it, right? And seizing it. It's not how it works. They have to have a warrant for that. So all these people that voluntarily gave this information, including their own property, when it comes to what's his name, Terrell, was pulling down that SD card in that camera. Like, he can do that. That's not a crime scene. And even if it was a crime scene, he can go up there and say, hey, this is mine. I'm taking this. You can't seize my property. They have to have a warrant. Like, we don't just suspend the Constitution because this is a crime scene. Like, that's not how this works. I'm if they were really concerned about it, I'm sure they'll get a warrant within a couple of minutes. Not that hard, but that's just not how it works. He didn't break any laws. He didn't do anything nefarious. His explanation of that whole thing was, hey, people are stealing hats. People are stealing stuff. I wanted to get the camera down and, preserve that. And all the indications that we have is that he voluntarily gave that information to authorities. They can go in, they can forensically analyze that. They know exactly if it's been any manipulation. If anything was erased, they can recover it from SD cards. I mean, that's easy to do. So, this idea, and even go back to the crime scene, right? It is once they paved over the crime scene, once they're done, and they were there 24/7. There were hundreds of people, is what I was told by law enforcement. It was the only thing that I got out of that cop at UVU when I was questioning him. He said there were hundreds of people here. And I don't know if that's exaggeration or literal, but a lot of people there working 24/7 for 3.5 days straight, processing that crime scene, getting anything of forensic value out of it. Their intention was to have the school back open on Monday. They weren't going to cut corners. That's what they wanted to do. And of course, UVU decided that, hey, we're going to remediate this place to mitigate any sort of trauma that is going to be relived by students and people that saw it, that were there. I mean, it just makes sense. And like, they're not living in the fantasy that, like, this is pretty straightforward, right? Like, we had somebody shoot Charlie Kirk. Nobody at the time is thinking, oh, you know what? What if there's an exploding mic? You know why they weren't thinking that? Because there was no evidence of that. Nobody said, you know what? I saw something explode under her shirt. No, these are retards online that are creating fantastical stories that sell clicks, views, and super chats. That's why they're being made.
Hey, Gary.
Yes.
I looked up what the requirements are for remediation for bodily fluids on a school, and then what their protocols are for grass cleanup. And it said that it lists out all the biological hazards and the timelines to get them cleaned up. So they were actually over. This is the grass cleanup protocol, what they have to do in order to clean up the bodily fluids or biohazards.
Where did this come from?
Google.
Yeah,
and I specifically
because I imagine that each state probably has different protocols. I think it's relevant regardless, because I'm sure regardless is kind of like a standard, right? I didn't know, like, what was the prompt?
The prompt was, what are the remediation requirements for OSHA when bodily fluids or crime scene material were on a school campus in grass?
Okay, so we're talking about federal standards. So that's great. All right, so containment keeps students and staff completely away using physical barriers and safety signage. Clotted or bulk material must be carefully scooped up using personal protective equipment and placed in biohazard disposable bags. Soil excavation, contaminated grass, thatch, and top layers of soil usually must be dug up and removed, as liquid biohazards cannot be easily wiped from dirt. Chemical treatment, the remaining dirt area is treated with specialized eco-safe disinfectants or lime to neutralize pathogens without creating a toxic hazard for children. Restoration, the excavated site excavated area is backfilled with clean topsoil and reseeded or sodded or paved over, right? Remedial, this is the timelines. Because this is a public school environment with grass, the risk of student exposure, pest attraction, all those things. Well, that makes perfect sense too. I hadn't even thought about that. The fact that you're going to have bugs and animals coming in there, smelling that stuff. First 2 hours, immediate action. Obviously, that didn't happen within 24 hours, beyond 24 hours. So this is clearly a priority, clearly a major priority, which makes, perfect sense. No, that was a good find. I like that. I want to get to his question or his answers to these questions. And then, oh man, we're getting late.
I don't understand why we're looking at photos of screenshots of Tech's not using their platform. So maybe you can unpack that. That would be really helpful, because that's like probably the most damning. Move it through, since he didn't do it, he didn't use it. I think that has to be proven in a much more valid way than photos of screens of him saying that. I think it's just the way they're conveying his confessions and his messages come across very unusual to me. So I would love to hear your explanation as to why are they said, here's where taking a man
On like that short notice, Clint. But like he's looking at it all the time. So there was like 5 there, right, Thief?
Yeah.
You got them all?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the point, because this is actually perfect, because you and I had just covered the paving over, but he added in a point that I don't even think I was aware of that. The governor and FBI, is that what he said?
Yeah, so I saw it when I was doing the Google search before. I just didn't look at it yet, but I guess an employee of the contractor that was hired for this job went on some sort of podcast and said that the state government and the FBI told them to make it a quick and quiet job.
Is that odd?
It would be very odd if you can validate that.
Right.
What does the contractor say about it? Because I think that's who you would really try to dig down into. This thing has got such a high profile at this point in time. This guy's saying that he worked for the contractor. So how does he have knowledge of this, and from what font does it spring? Okay. All right. So I think that would be one of my big questions. Now, going back to what Clint had said about the paving, the fact that they would have removed that much dirt, which I had heard, because there has to be kind of an underpinning. Mm-hmm. This is going to disrupt the topography, as I previously stated, relative to elevations and everything, and how you go back out and reconstruct the crime scene. Now, for all I know, they took every resource that they possibly had, both with the state police, in Utah, and with the FBI, with their ERT.
Folks, real quick, I just want to impeach this concept to begin with. Like, here we have the Charlie Kirk assassination. Do you think you can just quickly and quietly, because that word is kind of thrown in there, let's quietly, like, let's sneak this in there? Like, you don't think people are going to know? You think that's, I don't know if they were so dumb that they actually said that, or people are just DJing that in there. Like, do you think we're just going to sneak this renovation in there? No one's going to know. Like, oh, it looks a little different. I don't know what happened. Like, that's absurd on its face, I think. So,
response team that shows up at the request of the locals that would have come in, and they would have applied their technology to it. Maybe they felt comfortable enough with their assessments out there, but I still, with the information they gleaned, but I cannot understand for the life of me, what was the rush? I mean, literally, what was the rush in order to get this done? And we're not talking, again, I go back, you're not going down to the hardware store and buying pavers and throwing them out there. Yeah. You're altering the landscape of this moment in time, which let's face it, I'll put it to you this way. Decades from now, there will probably still be people that will go back and visit that spot for whatever their interest is, to have a photo made, or, to weep at it, or do whatever it is that people choose to do. This is going to be something that will be memorialized publicly. Mm-hmm. And it ain't nothing like it looked at that particular time. Right. Okay. Because it's been completely altered forever and ever. Amen.
This actually just made me think of another, before we go to Clint's second point, another thing I've been thinking about earlier, I forgot to ask you about, is as we ended up finding out once they arrested Tyler Robinson, this is somebody who lived in Utah, drove from a place in Utah to another place in Utah to commit a crime in Utah. And that is why it is a state case now and is in state court and handled by state detectives, because it's their jurisdiction. However, right when the crime happened, the FBI came in and was like handling everything.
Yep.
For a manhunt like that, would you say that is standard or not?
First off, the FBI has to be invited in. Okay. Think of them as a vampire.
As a vampire.
Yeah. You got to invite them into your house, right? So, all due respect. And
what did they do to you?
Yeah, nothing. I've worked a lot of cases with them over the years. It's one of those organizations where a lot of information goes in and nothing comes back out.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, they do a great job in the things that they do. But they could also justify them being there because they view this as a terroristic act. Mm-hmm. Right. This is a threat perhaps to Homeland Security. I don't mean the agency. I'm literally talking about Homeland Security, such a high-profile individual. That could be a motivation. There would have been a specific request that was put into the feds. We need you here. And they will oblige you. They will show up. Remember, I talked about ERT. There's probably an ERT in Salt Lake City, okay, which many of these people that are on these teams are graduate-level forensic scientists. They're also FBI agents. And they come out and specifically work these highly complex scenes. He does not, whether it's digital technology, satellite technology, they can bring force to bear that the local constabulary does not, even at a state level, because they can.
He's talking about like, hey, why would they bring in the FBI? And he's laying out the case. Like, they're bringing forces to bear, resources and things that the local state, like, they're not going to have, of course. Like, this is the FBI. This is all your tax dollars, and nobody, like, they have unlimited budgets because it's all your money. Federal tax dollars, unlimited money. They just hand that stuff out left and right. So of course they would want that.
Bring force to bear that you cannot even begin to fathom, whether it's digital technology, satellite technology, just boots on the ground, the latest cutting edge stuff that they can bring to bear there. And they work really well in high profile environments that are very dynamic and changing, because that's what they do. They're called in to do these sorts of things. So if you've got, no disrespect to the Utah State Police, they're a fine organization and they have their own crime scene people. But when you come into a situation like this that is so massive, massive in the sense of how it's kind of impacting the national conversation, this sort of thing, you defer to them. And isn't it interesting? You never hear about people with the FBI making comment on anything, do you?
Mm-mm.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
So, because they don't do that, they work at their own pace. So let's say that they come involved in a case, right? You ask them to take the lead. Guess what? Automatically, you lock down the information.
Well, let me hit a couple super chats, some other comments real quick I don't want to miss. Candy showed who she was today. She was talking about Charlie's assistant, the young, 21-year-old kid who got a ride on a private jet. What are you doing? Go get Charlie water or shine his shoes. Mikey McCoy was doing a lot of things. Mikey, I'm assuming that's who we're talking about. The age fits him. And he was taking video footage. He was constantly uploading content. I'm sure he helped with Charlie on a huge number of things. And as far as I know, Candace has an assistant, and I know every other person that is an executive at that level has an assistant. And matter of fact, with organizations much smaller than that, they have assistants. Gary and Gray went to UVU, boots on the ground. Why haven't these deniers done that? Yeah. I heard that the project was already scheduled. K-Boss, I don't think that's true. I don't think that that's true. I did hear people saying that early on. I've found no evidence of that. So we'll just, I haven't seen anything that said that. I don't think that's true. Could be. Oh my God, the prosecution doesn't release evidence to the public. Exactly right. It's all about making some money for these people. That's it. I disagree. You talk bad about everyone that doesn't agree with your narrative. Can you agree that it's hard to trust the government and there's way too much weird shit that doesn't make sense? Yeah, and I've talked about this at length. And by the way, I've been the most congenial person in any of this. I'm just going to pat myself on the back. Last night was a great example where I had multiple people, including Diligent Denizen and Project Constitution. My patience gets worn a little thin. When I find, here's the problem. Here's where I'm probably never going to stop talking and resorting to some level of ad hominem. It's based on their actions. When you're taking things and saying that it's evidence and it's not, and you're saying that Erica Kirk, you would never hear me say one bad thing about anybody. If you don't sit there and accuse people that are innocent of things that you have no evidence to accuse them of. I find it disgusting, and I resent you people, and I hate those people because what they're doing is evil. I'm sorry. And on top of that, just how dumb and gullible so many people are. So I'm sorry, when you believe in exploding Mike, you're dumb, you're gullible. You are. And you don't even take that personal. The fact is, you don't understand the basics about ballistics. You don't understand the basics about explosives. We have done everything we can. I've had Matt Tardio. He's going to be on tonight. I'm sure the Exploding Mike will come on again. He's an actual explosive expert. I've worked with explosives my whole life. I've explained that it defies physics. I've done everything I can to give you the information, and you're like, nope. I love my ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. I want to believe this. I'm sorry. I got no respect for you. But the worst part of that is that you're going around and you're attacking innocent people. You're accusing them of murder, and not just murder. You're murdering their own husband. And then on top of that, you go further and you revel in the idea that Erica Kirk and other people within her circle are complicit in the sex trafficking of kids. And just the nasty, disgusting things that you guys say about these people that you have no evidence that they are nothing other than victims. So no, at some point, like you want to say, hey, let's have a civil discussion. There's anybody that can come on the show. I've had civil discussions with them. I've avoided that face to face, but I'm saying in general, like you people are believing in horse shit. And here's the other problem, and what we're going to get to tonight is that you are being manipulated by forces that are wanting you to believe things that ultimately convince you to act against your own interests. Folks, Russia, China, the Islamists, I'm telling you right now, they are working in concert to push this stuff because of the damage that it's doing to America and the damage that it's doing to the fabric of this country. When you want to turn truth and logic upside down on its head, and you want to just let me push this stuff so I can make money off of it, which is what Baron Coleman and some of these clowns say. Like, I just want to be able to investigate and ask questions. No, you're not investigating or asking questions. If that's all you were doing, Gary wouldn't be making debunking videos and pointing out the fact that you're a con artist, that you're a slimy, you are the archetype of the worst lawyer possible. You're a slimy garbage of a human being person that is deceiving people intentionally. I see what you're doing. I know what you're doing, Candace. I know what you're doing, Baron Coleman. I know what you're doing, Ian Carroll. You Jew-hating piece of trash. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Tyler talking to the TPS people. Yes, it's so odd for them to talk to what they assume is a student asking about the event that they're setting up. Yeah, like they even registered that in their brain. Maybe it was probably the 10th person that did it. Maybe they remember. Maybe they don't. There you go. Rustic says Paramount, the University of Utah Institutional Biosafety Manual or USU Biological Waste Guidelines Protocol dictate that all cleanup must be documented, waste must be disposed of. There you go. Candace's show is about the X-Base's last name. She's got nothing else. If Mossad had the capability to alter cell information, you would think if Tyler was at the steakhouse, they would have pinged and taken him out, right? It's pretty much desert out there. Yeah, that's the other part of this. Like, he was a patsy. It would make no sense to allow the patsy to live. Tyler wouldn't have survived. And now that's what they're saying. Like, oh, they're going to get him before the hearing or the trial. They were saying that, like, I remember right after he was taken into custody, people were like, there's no way he's going to last a week in there. They're going to take that guy out. There ain't no way they're going to let him talk. And now they've built the case. Now they have all the evidence. Now they've presented all the evidence that the state has at the preliminary hearing. Don't you think they'd want to do that before that happened? And why would they even let him get to that point to begin with? Like, the level of complexity and the level of imagination, like all the gaps that you have to fill in to turn this into a conspiracy. Like, they had to do this, they had to do, we didn't see them do any of this stuff, but like all of these things that you have to create to make the conspiracy real is bonkers. Like I don't know why this happened, but I guess I don't even know. There's like so much. Like, you have to sit there and say that all of these agencies are lying. All the people involved are lying. All of these, I don't know, people in maroon shirts that were trying to, be these body doubles of Tyler Robinson, and it wasn't even the right body double. Like, if you're going to have the body double, you want the body double of the person allegedly taking the shot, not the maroon wearing Tyler Robinson. You want the black wearing Tyler Robinson. But it doesn't have to make sense, and it doesn't. Yeah, already got that one. Gary, I love it when you get your Trump truth bombs on. Absolutely. Thank you. I try to be kind, and like at some point in time, I'm not going to participate in your mental illness. This is I feel the exact same way when you're going to try to force me to use pronouns. No, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Tyler's innocent. I know you want me to. I know you want me to pretend that the government was involved in this. I'm okay with the government being involved in it. You just got to show me some evidence. I'm not going to protect the government. I think that the government shouldn't be trusted either. But again, we should always be skeptical. We still need to assess everything on an individual basis and not just carry over default thinking. It's like, the government lies. Guess what? You lie. I've lied. You've lied. Doesn't mean we lie all the time. Some of the things we say is actually pretty true. It's just a fact. It's so dumb. It's like dealing with elementary school children, maybe even younger. You just have this overindulged imagination where you think of it and you're like, this is real. It's delusion. It's insanity. It really is.
Because they're processing it, and as they process it, they hold on to it. They hold on to that data, and they don't have press conferences. They're not like the local.
I don't know if he does either.
I was wondering, was he working the case? No, he wasn't.
Listen,
he wasn't. He's a bureaucrat. He's a bureaucrat.
Yeah,
so
I think that's
he's
fair to
political.
say.
He is a political animal, right? Ministry of silly walks. So anyway, he is he's out there doing his thing, but you don't see the FBI making comments. So once you open that door to the FBI and they take the lead on things, mute. It goes dead silent because they're actually controlling everything at that point in time. They're going to control the narrative. They're going to control what is released and what is not going to be released. Yeah.
But they did give it back though once they gave the state the lead on it once.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
apprehended.
but there are certain conditions that you have to adhere to. If you're going to dance with them, there are conditions that you have to adhere to relative to the way they do things and they handle things. Now, we've heard some of the stuff that's come out in the preliminary hearings, talking about how certain evidence was routed, toward them, toward the ATF, and on a variety of different platforms relative to what was collected and who is handling it. But I don't think you're going to hear anything, say, for instance, relative to data about how the ERT actually processed the scene out there. You see, I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to play it very close to the vest, and all shall be revealed at trial because you will have, you're going to have FBI agents that are going to be subpoenaed. They're going to give statements. They're going to give testimony. They're going to be asked very digital people. They're going to be there too. And they're going to there's going to be specific information that they will have that will try to fill in the blanks, if you will, relative to in just about any area of evidentiary collection, security, and assessment.
Got it. All right, Dave, what was the second thing Clint had there?
Understanding the nature of how Tyler Robinson could have gotten the rifle onto the roof and just the logistics of all of that.
And he said something
setting
about
it
4
up.
minutes, right?
Yeah, 4 minutes and not even zeroing the sights or anything like that.
You see an issue with that timeline?
Yeah, if you broke it down, I'd see a serious, because everybody I've talked to has said that this is not the easiest weapon in the world to break down.
Right.
Was it actually broken down? Well, when we see that image of
Sorry, we lost Joseph's mic for 1 second.
weapon, I can in fact see why people would have trouble grasping the idea that he is walking stiff-legged up that stairwell with that weapon in his pants. And again, you see him being stiff-legged.
Again, Matt Kester has reproduced this. There's nothing hard about this, folks. It's 2 bolts to remove the stock. Removing the stock is going to take that down to about 50%. Reduce the size by about 40%. So he's going to be able to hide that very easily. You're going to be able to put that thing back together in less than a minute. Matt Kester does a very similar rifle in less than a minute. And then on top of that, that is not going to affect accuracy, and definitely not affect accuracy at 138 yards. The barreled rifle, the barreled action. On top of that sits the. Let me see, and I'm going to have to be very careful about this, just so everybody's clear. All right, so up there we have a rifle, right? And we have that rifle up there. The scope right there is actually connected to the barreled action. All right, if I take 2 bolts, I can remove the stock portion of that. It's just 2 bolts. The barreled action and the scope are what's together. And by the way, if I took the scope off, I mean, technically I could take that scope off, put it back on, and it's still going to hit within 138 yards. I'm still going to hit a person. It's not going to come that out of zero. Me taking the stock off and putting it back on is not going to affect accuracy at all. And that's what I would want to do. And we believe at this point, and it is speculation to some extent, exactly how he did that. We're not sure. But again, Matt Kester did the exact same thing. So he had his son, very similar height, weight, with very similar clothes, take a very similar rifle, disassemble it, reassemble it in under a minute. Nothing hard about it. No crazy explanation needed. So that's where we're at. And that's where we're at. Folks, I definitely highly recommend that you go watch the rest of that. Obviously we skipped over a bunch. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough content here. I'll be able to get that done in an hour and then watch some of Candace Owens and then still be done by, 7 and to be able to take an hour break. We're about 20 minutes to our next show. As a matter of fact, one thing that I do want to show you really quick is make sure you come watch us here in 20 minutes. We're going to be talking about the Deception Network. It'll be with Matt Tardio and Nick Rakita. So make sure you come join us there. Go ahead and hit the set a alert for that, and that would be great. Make sure you guys just hang tight, go use the bathroom, come back. Hopefully you guys found that helpful and informative. Again, I think it was some of the best content that's been done on this. We've attacked every element of this multiple times, and we're just going to continue to do that. That's why they're winning the propaganda, because they just keep repeating these things over and over. And it would be nice if we could just address them once and move on. We can't. They determine the battlefield, right? They determine the operating environment. We have to adjust to it, and that's what we got to do. And we're going to continue to do that. And I think it's because it's so important. Folks, I believe this is an existential threat. I really do. What's going on right here? And I'll talk more about that here in the next 20 minutes. But we appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate all your love and support.
Hey, Gary, I think there might be one or two.
Oh, there is some more super chats. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that. I will hit those. Enjoy the show, Gary. Always a good time. Thank you, Larry Peters. We appreciate you. They think this is the most succinct, grand conspiracy ever designed, perfectly executed. Yeah, and they're absolutely nuts. Sorry, but you are. We want you just as you are, Gary. Truth always wins. Thank you, Cindy. Why do your chat folks attack people for having questions? I don't know what was said. And last time that somebody said they were being attacked, all they were getting was responses. I don't even know what that means. I doubt that you were actually getting attacked. Maybe you were. Guess what? If I go to Candace's chat and I'm like, Tyler Robinson is allegedly the killer. Like, see what insanity comes out of that. You're going to get treated much nicer here with a different opinion than you will be treated anywhere else on the other side of this whole discussion. So that question goes both ways. Fox and Megyn Kelly are criticizing the judge just for clicks. Yeah, Kelly is a grifter. I used to love Megyn Kelly. She is turned in one of the most despicable people on the internet. I mean, she's right there with Candace as far as I'm concerned. You know, the round you supposedly ballistics don't add up for no exit when nobody is buying the magic bullet theory, didn't buy it for Kennedy, don't buy it now. Who engraves test shot on casing? I don't know, maybe crazy people that are going to go out and commit murders. A lot of people, well, I won't say a lot of people, but that's what happened. Nobody does this. Again, we just had a clinician, somebody that has vast experience in the forensics world, that does this for a living, provides you explanations, talked about experiences, things that he's seen before. And if you can't accept it, then you just can't accept reality. And that's your choice. But, I don't know what to tell you. We have Martin Luther King. We have Chuck Ritter. We have Charlie Kirk. We have Shane Hill. All of them were shot at a closer distance than Charlie Kirk with no exit wound. And you're like, it's still impossible. His head would have blown clean off. I know, because I shot my grandpappy's rifle. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You guys are in denial. Delusion, mental illness, got nothing for you. Thank you guys for all your love and support. Continue to share this, like, subscribe, become a member, help us out. Make sure you guys tune in the next 17 minutes for our next show. It'll be even better than this one, I promise you. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready, and we'll talk to you soon.